Class, in this world, where are you going to go alone? I want to take this opportunity to go out and look for my parents and relatives. He thought that what Sue's father said was right. Perhaps he and Liying were really not on the same path. He had no interest in what Liying wanted to pursue, and Liying felt that the life he wanted was not ambitious. This time when Wang Jun leaves, he will not look for Liying. He has been abandoned by Liying more than once or twice. This time he plans to go alone to find his parents and relatives. In the past, as a son, he was blinded by love and ignored the feelings of his parents and relatives too much. After the end of the world, Wang Jun wants to pick up the responsibility of being a son again. That's fine, that's fine. Since Wang Jun already has a target, Sue's father can't keep him here any longer. It is natural and right for him to go looking for his relatives. He can persuade Wang Jun to let go of Liying, but there is no way he can stop Wang Jun from looking for his relatives. So as the sun set, Wang Jun said his final goodbyes to Sue's father, then stood up, entered the dimly lit villa alone, and began to pack his things. Father Sue watched outside Wang Jun's villa for a long time, then lowered his head and sighed, then walked back to his own villa with the blueprint in his arms. These days, it is rare to meet one or two close friends of different ages with whom he can get along, but none of them want to stay to accompany him, an old man. Father Sue feels that life is so lonely. In the kitchen of the Sue family, Sue's mother and Sue were peeling peanuts. Sue's mother looked back at Sue's father who walked into the yard and asked Sue in a low voice, "Have you told you about this?" Sue glanced at her mother and saw that she looked serious and a little guilty. Yi said that he has to go out tomorrow to pick up Li Xiao's godmother, so I want to wait until he comes back. Mom, you also know that the world outside is so dangerous.
I have told him now.
If he is distracted by this matter, then your grandson will be without a father. You have to hurry up. Mother Sue threw a few peanuts into the bowl and urged, "It's been 3 months, and the belly will soon be bulging. We have to start making the necessary preparations, and you must also take on the responsibilities that he should take on." "Oh, I know.
Susupartangterali answered Sue's madre.
She felt that Sue's mother completely treated her as an ignorant child. She didn't want to listen to Sue's mother's nagging, so she threw the peanuts in her hand into the bowl, got up and ran away, saying as she ran, "Mom, I'm going to see Li Xiu. You have made the soup and wait for me to come back and eat it. Run slower, and be careful not to fall. Watch out for your stomach. Watch out for your stomach." Behind her, Sue's mother propped up her head, looking at Sue's back with worry on her face, covering her beating heart, scared half to death by Sue's jumping around. With her fragile heart, it would be better for her not to know that Sue was pregnant. Once she knew, she wanted to tie Sue up and not let this naughty child go anywhere. "What's wrong with your stomach?" Father Sue happened to open the kitchen door at this time and walked in from the yard. Looking at his wife, who was holding her heart, he asked again, "Do you have a stomachache?" "It's not me." Sue's mother stood up, holding a large bowl of peeled peanuts. She was going to stew a pig's trotter peanut soup for Sue today. She walked around Sue's father anxiously, intending to wash the peanuts in the bowl, but she poured the large bowl of peanuts directly into the sink. Then she yelled in frustration, turned around and punched Sue's father, who was blocking her way, and cursed, "Do you think there is a good man among you? None of you are good people. Oh, my daughter, what should I do? I am so worried all day long. I can't sleep well, and I can't eat. How can I live? What happened?" Originally, Father Sue thought Mother Sue's complaints were just ordinary. He was used to Mother Sue's complaints. He had heard them every day for 10 years and knew them by heart. But today Mother Sue's complaints had some new words. So Father Sue asked curiously, "What happened to our Sue? Why are you worrying so much?" Sue's mother opened her mouth, and her eyes were suddenly filled with tears. She hugged Sue's father's neck and started crying. Outside the kitchen, Sue had already put on her clothes, tiptoed into the living room, took Yi's 2 sabers, and quietly left the door. It seemed that her mother still couldn't hold back and wanted to tell her father about Xiao Ai's existence. When her father found out, how would he react? Would he get furious or something?
Susufel talito lanisi.
Although her father was usually smiling and didn't care much about things, that was because his bottom line had not been touched. If his bottom line was touched, he would get angry and his face would become stern, which would make people tremble in their hearts. So Su ran away quietly, holding a saber and slipping out of the gate of the wall, stepping on the bright moonlight, preparing to go to the villa where Li Xiuyu was. However, just as she was about to leave, she was blocked by Yiyu. He grabbed her and pressed her against the wall, laughing slyly. "Sister, it's so late. Do you know that your brother is outside watching over you? Let go, I'm going to see Li Xiaoyu." "No, kiss me and I'll let you go." Su pursed her lips and stopped talking. She had some understanding of this man. The more she went against him, the more excited he became. He was a typical rogue, but he was wearing a soldier's skin, so he seemed normal occasionally. She just looked at Yiyu under the moonlight. There was a little scarlet light in his eyes, like two of flames hidden deep inside, which was very beautiful. Slowly, Yiyu's eyes got closer and closer. When Su came to her senses, his hot lips had already touched her cold lips. He was not as rude as before, but just held them gently, with a hint of reluctance in his voice, and said, "Sister, I really want to do it to you again, but it's not the right time. It's not the right time." He has to leave early tomorrow morning. This time, he is to cross the entire Daxiang city. He doesn't know how many days it will take for him to come back. The situation when he gets there is even more unclear. Li Xia's godmother sent Li Xia a text message, but no one knows whether it was sent by Li Xia's godmother. Yiyu really can't bear to leave Su. If Li Xiaoyu hadn't played such a trick and needed someone to watch over her here, Yiyu really wanted to take Su with him. Su's heartbeat was a little brisk. She frowned, tilted her neck back, lowered her eyes, and moved her lips away. She struggled gently to push Yiyu away, but Yiyu's lips went down and kissed Su's neck. He lowered his voice in her ear and said, "King Kong and the fortune teller will bring a few people to stay. Don't go out during the days I'm away. Wait for me to come back and take you out to play. Be obedient and don't let your brother worry." This tone was like a brother telling his little sister that there were wolves outside and she should not go out alone. Su could not help but chuckle. At this moment, she did not feel disgusted by Yiyu's treatment of her. Perhaps it was because Yiyu was Xiao Ai's biological father? She only felt itchy and numb on her neck, so she avoided Yiyu while panting softly and said, "I'm not a child anymore. Don't bite me. Go quickly and come back quickly. Be careful on the road. Fight if you can win. Run if you can't. No way. Is there anyone in this world that I can't defeat?" After a few words, Yiyu's tail was up. He kissed Su's neck again, released the arms that were holding Su, and pulled Su to walk towards Li Xiaoyu's villa. He kept giving instructions along the way. Li Xiaoyu is a bit evil, and Li Ying's concerns are not entirely wrong. You should think about it yourself. If it really doesn't work, you should kill her as soon as possible. I know what's going on.
Susu naturally understood Li's abnormality.
Many people were worried about Li Xiaoyu. She was also worried that Li Xiaoyu would become a trouble. Li Ying's behavior was right. But Su and everyone else had no regrets about Li Ying's departure. Compared with Li Xiaoyu, who was in an unknown condition, Li Ying was the biggest hidden danger. A person who can sacrifice teammates at will for the overall situation is very scary because she can sacrifice Li Xiaoyu today and sacrifice Su and Xiao Ai tomorrow, or sacrifice anyone who may affect the overall situation, and it is the kind of sacrifice that is preventive before it happens. It is better to avoid associating with such people as soon as possible. Li Ying left on her own, so Su didn't have to find a way to chase her away. It was a pity that once Li Ying left, Wang Jun couldn't stay anymore. The two of them held hands, like two young men before the end of the world, and walked slowly in the moonlight, and slowly came to the front of Li Xiaoyu's villa. Now, except for Li Xiaoyu, everyone in the villa had moved out. Qin Yu and Ruerwei went to the medical building, Era squeezed in with Pai Ji's group, and Li Xiaoyu was, and placed on the cushion in the living room. The lights in the villa were on. When Su Su and Yi went in, Dr. Hong was leading two nurses, Liang Xiaoqi and Wu Daomei, to draw blood from Li Xiuyu. Qin Yu and Ruerue were sitting not far away. Ruerue was eating a bowl of noodles, while Qin Yu was looking at Li Xiuyu, while wiping the soup stains from the corners of Ruerue's mouth. Seeing Su Su coming in, Ruerue raised his head and called out sister obediently. Dr. Wu stood up, flicked the tube containing Li Xiaoyu's blood in his hand, turned his head to look at Su Su, raised his eyes, nodded, and explained, I want to take some blood samples from Li Xiaoyu and do a virus test so that we can know whether she'll transform into a corpse or mutate. Corpse? Mutation? Su Su repeated these two words and looked at Dr. Hong with interest. She probably understood what Dr. Hong meant. Corpse transformation means becoming a zombie, and mutation means becoming a person with superpowers. So she nodded and let Dr. Hong leave with Li Xiuyu's blood. Liang Xiaoqi and Wu Daomei stayed by Li Xiuyu's side. As nurses, it was their duty to take care of patients. They also helped Dr. Hong monitor Li Xiuyu's vital signs at all times. Liang Xiaoqi and Wu Daomei carefully recorded Li Xiuyu's temperature and body abnormalities every hour on a form. Suddenly, Su Su felt that the doctors and nurses he had saved were quite useful. At least at this time, they were of great use. How's it going? While asking Qin Yu in the restaurant, Su Su took the form handed over by Liang Xiaoqi and glanced at Li Xiuyu's temperature record. She found that Li Xiuyu's temperature was basically maintained at around 37 degrees. Although her face looked so red, her temperature was normal and she did not have a fever. Although she didn't have a fever, Qin Yu's face was still full of worry. She took Ruerue, who had just finished his noodles, down from the table, walked to Su Su and frowned, saying, He doesn't have a fever, but his complexion has been strange. It was orange during the day, but now it's almost sunset red. While talking, Su Su caught a glimpse of Liang Xiaoqi, who was combing Li Xiuyu's hair with a comb, so she tilted her head and asked, Why are you combing her hair?
Ah?
Liang Xiaoqi looked confused. She raised her head and waved the comb in her hand toward Su Su. She pointed at the white spider webs on the teeth and explained, I don't know where the spiders came from. There are so many spider webs on Li Xiuyu's head. I combed them off for her.
Don't move.
Su Su raised her hand and walked over quickly. Yu behind her also moved forward. Qin Yu picked up Ruerue and stood there watching worriedly. Su Su walked to Liang Xiaoqi's side and took the comb from her hand. Upon closer inspection, she saw that there were indeed several white silk threads on the teeth. What on earth is going on? Qin Yu, who had not noticed these abnormalities before, hugged Ruerue and asked worriedly. Su Su shook her head, returned the comb in her hand to Liang Xiaoqi, and said, Don't take these threads off her. Let her grow and see what she will look like. But Liang Xiaoqi was also frightened by the silk thread coming out of Li Xiuyu's head. Is this okay? There won't be any problem, right?
She's like this.
Even if she's in danger, it's enough time for you to run away. Glancing at Li Xiuyu, who was like a big dumpling, the rope she was tied with was a climbing rope, so you can imagine how strong it was. Su Su comforted Liang Xiaoqi and the others and said, looking at Su Su's expression, it seemed as if she was not worried at all that Li Xiuyu would suddenly mutate into some kind of monster and kill everyone in seconds. What she meant was that even if Li Xiuyu turned into a monster, it would be enough for these people to escape. After all, in today's world, it is absolutely impossible for someone to quickly turn into a monster within the reaction speed of a human, quickly break free from the constraints of the climbing rope, and then quickly kill people. If there is, and it has reached a level that even Su Su cannot stop it, then no one in the entire villa area can escape, and neither can the survivors in the entire Dashang city. What's more, Su Su's 5 senses are very sensitive. She sensed some unusual energy fluctuations from Li Xiuyu. That is the energy of a psychic. It was not very obvious during the day, but now at night, it is becoming more and more obvious. Therefore, it is very likely that Li Xiuyu is undergoing an extremely complex evolutionary process. The evolution process varies from person to person. Not everyone will experience repeated fevers and then unknowingly awaken the 5 basic superpowers. Just like Xia Yaoshe, he directly mutated twice and developed lightning superpowers. Who says Li Xiaoyu will not be the same as Xia Yaoshe? Liang Xiaoqi, Wu Daomei, and Qin Yu, who was holding Ruerui, were a little nervous at first, but seeing Su Su's determined attitude, they gradually calmed down. However, these people were ordinary people after all, and had never seen the evolution process of such superpowers. Without them saying anything, Su Su took the initiative to dismiss these people for safety reasons. Qin Yu held Ruerui in her arms, standing at the gate of the villa area. She was reluctant to leave and was hesitant, but when she looked at her 2-year-old son in her arms, she sighed and walked out anyway. Su Su and Yi Yu were the only ones left in the villa. Yi Yu crossed his arms and looked at Li Xiaoyu lying on the cushion. There were more and more white cables on Li Xiaoyu's head. In just a short while, her black hair had turned white. Yi Yu frowned and said to Su Su, "I'd better not go tomorrow. I'm too worried about leaving you alone."
Why not?
Su Su walked a few steps closer to Li Xiaoyu, lowered her head and looked carefully, and found that Li Xiaoyu not only had white threads in her hair, but also slowly formed white threads around her body. She raised her head, and in order to reassure Yi Yu, she told the truth. "I was not sure at first, but now I can be sure that Li Xiaoyu is undergoing a supernatural evolution." "How do you know?" "I can sense that there are supernatural energy fluctuations around her." "Why can't I feel it?" Yi Yu squatted closer to Li Xiaoyu, looked at Li Xiaoyu's face with his eyes wide open, and didn't feel any energy fluctuations at all. "You're really going to be killed by your own stupidity." Su Su looked at Yi Yu, who was staring at Li Xiaoyu. She walked half a circle and stood behind Yi Yu. When she thought that such a stupid man was actually her daughter's biological father, would such a low IQ be passed on to Xiao AI? She suddenly wanted to kick the man in front of her. However, he changed his mind and thought again. This person did not know how to absorb energy. He could passively absorb the crystal cores he ate. He was obviously a 3rd-level fire-type mutant. Apart from his sharp ears and eyes, his other 3 senses were not developed at all. It was a miracle that he could walk out of the city alive. Maybe some people are born like this, weaker in some aspects and more prominent in some aspects. Yi Yu's IQ and EQ are too low, but his supernatural power is super strong, which just proves this point, doesn't it? Su Su comforted herself that Yi Yu must be saved, so she frowned, bent down, stood behind Yi Yu, pressed Yi Yu's shoulders with both hands, and released her water energy to the fullest, slowly wrapping Yi Yu's whole body. Her long hair fell beside Yi Yu's ears, and she said in a gentle and persuasive way, "Close your eyes. What do you feel?" "Your hair is tickling my ears." "What else?" "No more." "Well, you're hopeless." Su Su withdrew her hand and her water energy, drew a conclusion, turned around and walked out of the villa. Yi Yu opened his eyes, stood up and chased after her, smilingly holding Su Su's hand. Su Su struggled twice but failed to break free, so she let him hold her hand all the way and sent her back to the Su family. Since Su Su was so sure that Li Xiaoyu would not turn into a monster, Yi Yu believed Su Su. He decided to follow the schedule tomorrow and take a few people with Li Xia to pick up people. Since he was leaving, he was sure that he would be reluctant to let Su Su go. He looked very clingy and kept pestering Su Su outside the wall of the Su family. He let Su Su go home only when she was about to lose her temper. As soon as Su Su entered the door of her own villa and put the 2 sabers belonging to Yi Yu in her hand on the shoe cabinet at the entrance, she felt that the atmosphere of the whole house was a little different. She stretched her neck and looked in the living room and the kitchen, but did not find any trace of her parents. She was about to go upstairs, but heard a click and the sound of a lighter was heard in the backyard. Su Su walked into the kitchen and through the glass door, saw her father sitting under the eaves smoking. As far as she could remember, Su's father had quit smoking for many years. He would only take a puff when he was very upset. Su Su shrank her neck, thinking back to when she sneaked out and her mother was about to tell her father everything, so she wanted to pretend that she hadn't seen her father.
Su, back.
Father Su, who was sitting outside the house, called Su Su without turning around. There was an unusual sense of oldness in his voice, which made Sue's heart ache. He opened the glass door, walked out, and nodded in response. Yes, Dad. Sit down and talk to Dad for a while. As soon as Sue opened the glass door, Sue's father threw away the cigarette in his hand and waved away the remaining smoke in the air to prevent Sue from inhaling secondhand smoke. At this time, Sue's father was sitting under the eaves, looking at the cold world outside, and the breath he exuded was full of heaviness. Sue paused for a moment, but still followed his words and sat next to her father. The father and daughter leaned against each other, looking at the high wall not far away.
They were silent for a while.
Happy birthday to all readers who have birthdays. I wish all the kids who have finished their exams good grades. Dad, I must give birth to this child. Sue was firm in her attitude, and no one could shake her determination to give birth to Xiao Ai. After the baby is born, how do you plan to raise it? Raise it as usual. Raise it the way you should. Sue told her father the truth that after Xiao Ai was born, they should raise her the way she wanted. She had experience in raising children, so her parents didn't need to worry about this. Father Sue, who was sitting next to her, had heavy eyes. He nodded and said, "Now that you have made the decision, don't regret it if you encounter any problems in the future. You should talk to you nicely. It would be best if he is willing to take responsibility. If he is not willing, we won't beg him. You have to be responsible for your descendants. Your mother and I will also do our best to be responsible for them." Who is approaching the age of 50, doesn't want to see his children and grandchildren flourish? Of course, Sue's father and mother also want to enjoy the happiness of having children and grandchildren around them, but the world is too difficult. An adult man will have a very hard life, not to mention a pregnant woman and a baby. To be honest, Sue's father and mother did not want Sue to give birth to the baby in her belly. Although they were so eager for Sue to be happy, the baby was growing in her belly day by day, and Sue would feel more and more tired. 10 months of pregnancy and giving birth is not as simple as opening and closing your eyes. It is a gamble for a woman with one foot on the gate of Hades. If the mother and child are safe, everyone is happy. If there is a slight mistake, it will be 4 lives. Why 4 lives? At that time, Sue's father and mother did not want to live anymore, and they died with Sue and her child.
Dad, don't worry.
I'm confident that everything will be fine. Sue tilted her head and looked at her father's temples in the dark. The night was so dark, but it still couldn't cover the graying hair on her father's temples. Her eyes suddenly became moist and she smiled. "You and Mom, just wait for your grandson to be born." Sue's father smiled but said nothing. Even though Sue acted so confidently, the worries of a parent could not be soothed with just a few words. After laughing, Sue's father patted Sue's head, just like he did when Sue was a child, as if telling Sue to take care of himself. Then he sighed, got up, and went back to his bedroom to rest. Sue, on the other hand, had been sitting under the eaves, watching her father disappear into the living room. She lowered her head, touched her belly with a somewhat uncomfortable mood, and said softly, "Xiao Ai, Grandpa and Grandma are really worried about you and Mom. It's okay. When you grow up, you must prove to Grandpa and Grandma that you are a filial child. You will love and take care of them together with Mom." As a child, Sue felt that she had never done anything for her parents. When she was almost 20 years old, her parents had always been worried about her, both before and after the end of the world. She knew that her parents were worried and distressed, but she was also a mother. As a mother, she should not be a coward. No matter how difficult the 10 months of pregnancy were, she would overcome all difficulties and bring little love into this world. Even if her parents will be worried and sad. Filled with guilt towards her parents and a beautiful vision for the future, Sue sat with Xiao Ai for a while and then went back to her room to sleep. On the second day, Sue's father and mother seemed to have some kind of tacit understanding with each other. They both suffered from insomnia and went to bed near the dawn. Sue was the same and slept until noon. When the 4 members of the Sue family got up again, Yu had already brought 10 people, including Li Xia and Shu Sheng, and set off early. Sue's mother opened the iron gate. She had just harvested a batch of millet in the greenhouse in the yard when she heard a burst of hustle and bustle outside the iron gate. She straightened up and planned to go out to take a look. Sue slipped out of the iron gate in slippers. Sue's mother dropped the knife and millet in her hand and ran after Sue. She was going to call Sue back to drink the soup. Outside the door, a large truck full of Coca-Cola bottles stopped right in front of Sue. Brother Pie jumped out of the cockpit, greeted Sue, threw a bunch of car keys to Sue, and ran to the medical building to see his son. However, Pigo's gang of gangsters could no longer hold back and opened the rear door of the truck to move the Coca-Cola inside. Before all the Coca-Cola was unloaded, some gangsters had already opened the Coca-Cola and started drinking it. Coca-Cola, the favorite of the young and dangerous, yeah. Even King Kong ran up to pick up 2 bottles of Coca-Cola, came to Zhuoshirjia, and kindly handed her a bottle, but Zhuoshirjia shook her head and rejected King Kong's kindness. Thank you. Carbonated drinks are not good for the body and will increase unnecessary sugar intake. King Kong smiled shyly. Since Zhuoshirjia didn't want it, he handed the Coke in his hand to Sue. Sue also shook her head and declined King Kong's kindness. Thank you, I don't want it. I understand. You all need to lose weight. King Kong nodded, holding 2 bottles of Coca-Cola, and walked away. Sue took 2 steps forward and walked around the truck. Just then, one of Pai Ji's subordinates came over and explained to Sue, "We found this truck behind the big supermarket in the next block. It is estimated that this truck was delivering goods to the supermarket at the end of the world." Yeah. Sue nodded and looked up at the truck. You only ran 2 blocks in this morning? Are there no zombies nearby? No more zombies. Occasionally, you can still see people running around on the streets. Are there already survivors on the streets? Hearing this, Sue was a little surprised. It was noon now, and the long-lost sun had appeared, shining warmly on people's bodies. The subordinate of Brother Pie who was talking to her nodded, then shook his head and said to Sue, "No, they are military personnel. We saw military personnel wandering around nearby, so we went directly to the big supermarket in the next block. We were afraid that when all the military personnel arrived, the big supermarket would be emptied. In fact, it was almost completely empty. I heard that the team of superpowers led by Xie Yaoshi went to that big supermarket to raid it every day." Thinking back to when Sue, Yu, and a few others walked from outside the Apple Villa area to the big supermarket in the next block, which was where they met Qinyu, it took them almost a whole day. That was because they were psychics, so they could kill the zombies more quickly. But now, Brother Pie and other ordinary people actually went back and forth in just one morning and brought back several trucks of supplies. It can be seen that the army really came. The army came as soon as you left. Sue tilted her head and looked at the back of the truck. Brother Pie's men were unloading supplies from a row of small carts. They were all quilts, bedding, various red and white beers, shower gels, soaps, dressing mirrors, clocks, computers, etc. These were all the leftover supplies from the raid. It was obvious that the big supermarket was indeed the one left behind by Xie Yaoshi's team. Hey, an orange notebook. Sue was sharp-eyed and saw a gangster about to throw an orange notebook out of the car. She raised her hand and called out, then walked over, looked at the orange notebook, and said with a smile, "I just happen to need a laptop. Can you give it to me? I'll trade it with you for supplies." No. Take it if you want it. This thing is valuable before the apocalypse, but it will be garbage after the apocalypse. Young and dangerous hurriedly gave the orange notebook he was about to throw away to Sue. Before the apocalypse, this thing was worth tens of thousands of dollars, but after the apocalypse, the network is sometimes good and sometimes bad, and the signal is sometimes there and sometimes not. I don't know what to use it for. Sue took it with a smile and nodded. Okay, I'll ask my mother to give you a few more vegetables later. Hey, okay. When they heard about vegetables, the gangsters didn't look happy. Following Sue's family, they had no worries about drinking water and eating vegetables. There was nothing fresh. They also knew that the Sue family had enough vegetables to feed pigs. I brought back so much garbage. Let's see if any of you girls need anything. If you need anything, take it. The rest can be thrown away. Not far away, Brother Pai came out of the medical building holding his son Su Lei, followed by Liang Xiaoqi. He also greeted the other 4 nurses and said generously, "Those shower gels and soaps. Go pick them out quickly. The little girl loves to be clean. Go quickly." Su turned around and happened to see Brother Pai holding his son with a very happy and satisfied smile. She raised her eyebrows and said casually, "After you've picked them out, don't throw away the remaining things. These things will come in handy sooner or later. Brother Pai, have someone clean up a villa and pile these things in it. They'll be useful soon. When the army arrives, they will build the prototype of a base, but it will not be a base at that time. It can only be called a safe area, or safe zone for short. At that time, everything will have to be exchanged for crystal cores and supplies. The survivors need to hand in a certain number of crystal cores to enter the safe zone they have designated. If they don't have crystal cores, they can exchange them for supplies. Any supplies will be fine, not necessarily food. Their Apple Villa district is so safe, it must have been within the military security zone long ago. The army will not drive out the people who have already moved in, but Su and the others cannot stay in the safe zone forever. They will have to go out sooner or later. If they come in again, they will need to hand over their supplies. Generally, the supplies required to enter a safe zone and a future base are 1/3 of the entire team's supplies. In other words, if 10 vehicles go out, you need to pay for 3 vehicles of supplies. This is certainly a bit of a scam, but the army is responsible for the safety of the entire safe zone. Those who live in it can be safe and worry-free, wander around without worry, and sleep well. When you think about it this way, you will naturally feel that it is fair. At this time, the young nurses picked and chose some sheets, quilt covers, mirrors, lipsticks, cosmetics, etc., and chattered excitedly as if it was the new year. Brother Pai held his son and smiled at him. He took 2 steps closer to Su and asked Su, "I heard that you and Dr. Zhua have a plan to go to the hospital to get some medical auxiliary equipment?"
Yes.
"So when are we going?" "To be honest, my son has diarrhea every other day. His foundation is not strong enough. I asked Dr. Jun, and he said it would be best to keep him in an incubator for a few days. It's too cold today, so I'm wondering when I can go back to the hospital and get those incubators back." Dr. Jun is one of the doctors who came back with us this time. He was starved to death in the blue light room and looked like he was about to die. He was brought back and had a good meal for a few days, and he looks healthy and energetic again. When Brother Pai talked about Dr. Jun, his face was full of respect. There was no other way. Now his son's health all depended on these doctors, so naturally he needed to be respectful to these doctors. And when he said this, Pai Ge's smile wrinkles at the corners of his eyes were wrinkled several layers, as if he was afraid that Su would refuse. There was a clear, flattering tone in his voice, but Su nodded, patted the truck beside him, and said seriously, "Since the army is here, we'd better leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, when they set up the cordon, they will have to collect supplies from everyone entering and leaving. A truckload of medical equipment has to be divided into 1/3 for the army. Isn't that a pity? Of course, we have to move things back and forth quickly before they set up the safe zone." Zhua Shijia, who was fiddling with the parts of a small bed not far away, frowned and stood up when he heard this. He walked to Su's side and looked at Su, expressing his disapproval. "Yu hasn't come back yet. Are you going to lead us there alone? Don't we still have King Kong?" Su's expression was somewhat ambiguous. She lightly bumped Zhua Shijia's shoulder and glanced at King Kong. King Kong beside him immediately raised his head and chest, stood at attention, and showed off his muscles. So Su deliberately smiled and said, "King Kong will protect you well, Dr. Zhua." "What's the connection?" Zhua Shijia, who had no idea what Su meant, glanced at King Kong without feeling anything, then turned around and went about his own business. Since Su felt that there was no problem, Zhua Shijia didn't say anything more. Yi left 8 people with them this time, and King Kong could just pick 3 people to accompany them. In addition, the zombies in this area were almost cleared out, and the obstacles on the road must have been removed. They would be able to go to the hospital much faster than last time, and maybe they could do it in 1 round trip in a day. Once Su and Brother Pai decided to set off tomorrow, All parties began to make intensive preparations. Brother Pai planned to take away 15 subordinates, leaving behind 4 gangsters, and follow the remaining 4 Special Forces soldiers to protect their small safe zone. Last time, the fortune teller went out with them for a few days, so this time he would stay in the villa area. The Special Forces soldiers who went out with them were led by King Kong. It's rare for King Kong to take on the responsibility. Although he kept in mind Yu's words that he shouldn't let Su go out alone before he came back, it was rare for him to show off his strength in front of Zhuo. After Su's encouragement, he completely turned a deaf ear to Yu's words. So a team led by Su, including gangster boss Brother Pai, 15 gangsters, 2 doctors, a nurse, and 4 Special Forces soldiers, was temporarily assembled under the noses of Su's father and mother. Qin originally wanted to go with them, but Li Xiaoyu needed someone to take care of her, so she did not go. After the departure was agreed, Su got on the RV at 3 a.m.
Her parents were still asleep at that time.
If her parents knew about it, they would definitely not agree to Su going out with her pregnancy. Moreover, Su estimated that she only needed to go back and forth once a day. Her parents might not have time to come out to look for her. She might come back. King Kong drove the RV, and Paiga sat in the passenger seat. All the doctors and nurses would stay in the RV. They put some medical supplies in the RV, such as disinfectant, cotton swabs, gauze, hemostatic forceps, and other not too bulky things, in case of emergency. Su got on the RV and just placed the 2 sabers left by Yu on the coffee table when everyone was preparing to leave quietly.
Bang, bang, bang.
There was a knock on the door. Zhuo was about to measure the blood pressure of Su, who was sitting on the sofa. When he heard the knock on the door, he got up and opened the car door. He saw Dr. Hong standing outside the car door. He was still thin, with a night of bright stars behind him. He stood in the dark, said a few words to Zhuo, handed her a piece of paper, and then turned and left. What is it? Su tilted her head and looked at the lonely back of Dr. Hong, who disappeared in the light and shadow. She then looked at the paper in Zhuo's hand, which had a long list of names, such as instruments and devices. He wants to do some research on the doomsday virus to see if he can develop a vaccine for newborns. These are the instruments he listed for us. He hopes we can help him get them back. After turning the paper in his hand, Zhuo handed it to Su to read. Su took it, but couldn't understand it at all, so she shook her head and returned the paper to Zhuo, frowning and asking, Dr. Hong has this ability? Does he have research on vaccines? You don't know? Dr. Hong is a doctor of virology and bacteriology. Zhuo smiled, put the paper away and put it in his pocket, and continued. As the saying goes, every profession has its own specialties. You are good at killing zombies, but the development and progress of mankind still cannot do without high-tech talents. Su, you will definitely not lose money by keeping this Dr. Hong. Su on the side raised her eyebrows and did not refute Zhuo's words. She was familiar with the doomsday vaccine. The Qinglong base in the north launched a doomsday vaccine for 6-month-old newborns 10 years after the apocalypse. However, the Qinglong base strictly guarded the research and development team, and outsiders could not know who developed the doomsday vaccine. So Su didn't know whether the doomsday vaccine at Qinglong base was developed by Dr. Hong, but she felt that an 80% success rate was a bit too low. The 20% of 6-month-old babies who failed to evolve would directly turn into zombies. If this ratio was converted into a real number, that would be a huge group of children. If Su was the leader of the Qinglong base, she would never release a vaccine with such a low success rate into the society. She would continue to invest materials and crystal cores in Dr. Hong's research until she found a 99.999% success rate for evolution. However, the leaders have their own interests to consider. Su doesn't want to be the leader of the base, and Xiao AI won't need to be injected with the doomsday vaccine in the future. The Qinglong base can do whatever it wants. Su has no right to interfere and doesn't want to interfere. She was just responding to Zhuo's words, so she thought about it. It's just a matter of supporting Dr. Hong. He won't consume much food in total, and she doesn't need to pay any crystal cores as compensation, so it doesn't matter. Junjiu and Liang Xiaoqi on the side lowered their heads and smiled, while they were still packing medical cotton and other things into the cabinet. Dr. Zhuo ran to the cockpit and said something, and King Kong started the RV, taking advantage of the night, leading a large truck behind and 10 city SUVs on the road. The journey was indeed very smooth. Not only did they not see any zombies, but the cars that were once scattered on the road were also almost all cleared away. The large comprehensive hospital where Zhuo worked was not far from the Apple Villa district where Su Su was. They drove for less than half an hour and arrived outside the large supermarket where they met Zhuo and Pai Ge. When the convoy arrived here, they could hear a lot of noise ahead from afar. There were gunshots, various special effects sounds from supernatural powers, and the roars of countless zombies as dubbing. Su Su opened the window of the RV, stuck her head out, and looked forward. There was a colorful scene ahead under the stars. Soldiers had set up a temporary roadblock on the road, and outside the roadblock, there seemed to be a civilian team preparing to rush out. What happened? Su Su retracted her head and walked to the cockpit again, looking at the noisy world outside the windshield from the front. This time she saw it more clearly. In the team that was about to rush out of the zombie pile, Xia Yaoshi was opening his hands and condensing a purple electric net. Was Xia Yaoshi desperate or crazy? Why did he run to the most dangerous place every day? How many people did he have to support? It's okay, it's all a routine.
I'll go down and ask.
King Kong, with a toothpick in his mouth, parked the car behind the roadblock, turned around, opened the door, and got out of the car. He grabbed a soldier in camouflage uniform at random. When the soldier saw the clothes on King Kong, he immediately stood at attention and saluted, and the two began to chat. But after a while, King Kong came back and said to Su Su and Brother Pai, "The troops are here and are preparing to set up a safe zone here to establish a position for the counterattack on Xiangqing. They can let us out, but when we come in again, they hope we will cooperate to measure our body temperature and observe our vital signs." Normal and reasonable request. Let's go. Su Su stared at the outside of the roadblock. The soldiers in those troops were cooperating with Xia Yaoshi's team, supporting that team with bullets. As Xia Yaoshi and his team pushed the defense line farther and farther, the open space outside the roadblock became wider and wider. The remaining soldiers began to clean up the zombie corpses on the ground. Wearing gloves and gas masks, they moved the zombie corpses one by one and moved them to the open space on the side to burn them. At first glance, there seems to be nothing wrong with this scene. Xia Yaoshi and others are going out to look for supplies, and the regular team is kindly cooperating with them. This is such a considerate act towards the civilian psychics. But Su Su looked at them coldly, sneered, and without saying a word, returned to the RV from the cockpit and sat down. Weren't the people in this team really using Xia Yaoshi and the others to rush forward, hiding behind and firing a few shots, taking the opportunity to set up a cordon and expand the scope of the safe zone? Of course, the establishment of any base is a wall built on the corpses of the superpowers. There is nothing to say about it, and the establishment of a base is beneficial to mankind without any harm. We cannot reject the positive significance of these teams just because they use people with special abilities to charge outside while they set up cordons behind to expand the safe zone. Sitting in the driver's seat of the RV, King Kong saw that the road ahead was clearer, so he stretched his hand out of the window and gestured to his colleague outside. That colleague nodded and signaled another colleague to open the roadblock and let Su Su's convoy out. There is a big supermarket on the left, and in front is Brother Pai's 5-star hotel. Turning right is the big hospital where Zhuo is. It is not far away. The zombies have almost been attracted by Xia Yaoshi's team. As soon as they passed the roadblock, King Kong turned right and went straight to the hospital without any intention of stopping to say hello to Xia Yaoshi and others. It was Xia Yaoshi who was standing next to his Volvo, about to open the door and get in the driver's seat, when he looked up and saw the RV in front of him turned a corner. The lights in the RV were warm and cozy, and several people in white medical uniforms were busy at work. Su Su walked to the window, raising her hand to close the window and draw the curtains. She seemed to glance at Xia Yaoshi, her big, bright eyes always containing something to say. Xia Yaoshe moved his body and opened his mouth to say something, but in the end he said nothing and did not set out to chase. After the RV turned successfully and led the vehicles behind it away smoothly, Xia Yaoshe lowered his eyes, concealing the deepest emotions in his eyes, and turned to get in the car. Two convoys, two directions, running in opposite directions in the night. They are looking for different supplies, which represents that the teams led by Su and Xia Yaoshe have different policies, different life philosophies, and different pursuits. Gradually moving away this time when Su and the others entered the hospital, they already had the previous clearance as a foundation. Although there were many zombies, the density was not high. King Kong and the other four psychics, together with Su and Su's two watermen, were able to completely control the situation outside the emergency hall, and soon they had almost cleared out the zombies outside the hall. A group of people rushed into the emergency hall while being attacked by zombies that were slowly moving towards them from both sides. There were also zombies in the emergency hall, all of which came from the outpatient department through the internal passage. However, there were not many of them, and there were no higher-level zombies. King Kong is a secondary mutated wind-type user. The three users he brought with him are a secondary mutated speed-type user named Mo Weiming, a secondary mutated strength-type user named Wandishan, and an earth-type user named Gotzi. Su didn't know the real names of Yi Yu's people. It seemed that they called each other by code names. For example, Yi's code name was Paopi and King Kong's code name was King Kong. This might be some kind of habit between them. Su had no intention of exploring it too much. She called them by their code names. Mo Weiming and Wandishan, together with Su's two watermen, rushed to the front, ready to cut off the internal passage between the emergency room and the outpatient department. Behind them, Gotzi would act according to the situation. King Kong and Su were left behind to concentrate on cleaning up the scattered zombies in the hall. Brother Pai and his subordinates, as well as Shushurjia, also helped in killing the zombies, but they were just the rear guard. Now all the zombies outside the clinic had been cleared out, and the number of zombies wandering over was negligible. Junjiu and Liang Xiaoqi's original task was to take care of the injured, but now there were no injured people for them to take care of, so they began to pack up the medical supplies in the emergency hall as everyone was clearing them out in an orderly manner. After everyone entered the emergency hall, Gotzi raised his hands, and a huge rock fell from the sky, blocking the door of the emergency hall. Then there was another turn, and a huge rock appeared, blocking the passage between the outpatient department and the emergency room. Gotzi's earth element ability is undoubtedly much stronger than Su's father's earth element ability. Su's father did not develop in the direction of attack. In recent days, he has been concentrating on studying how to use the earth element ability to build walls and houses. Su also allowed him to develop his interests and hobbies freely. Anyway, she didn't want her parents to go out to fight zombies to earn crystal cores for her. However, although Gotzi's stone was big, there were many gaps left, and there were still zombies that could crawl in through those tiny gaps. However, there were not many of them, and only 2 or 3 zombies could crawl into the emergency hall at a time. Any one of Brother Pai's subordinates can deal with 2 or 3 zombies. Collect the equipment in the emergency room first. Junjie gave the instructions and pointed towards the emergency room, where in addition to some equipment needed for emergency treatment, there were also a lot of disinfectants, cotton swabs, various sutures, etc. From the emergency room, there was also a small path that led directly to the Western Pharmacy. Opposite the Western Pharmacy was the Chinese Pharmacy, and then there was the infusion room. Following Junjie's instructions, Pai Ji's 15 subordinates took off their backpacks one by one and began to quickly collect all the medical equipment in the emergency room. 2 of them even carried out an emergency operating table. Seeing this, Paiga quickly ran to Su, who was jumping around killing zombies, and asked, Su, I don't think this will work. We still have to move the stones at the door and drive the truck to the gate. There are too many things. We have to move them onto the truck slowly. This is efficient. Otherwise, after we clear all the things and pile them up in the hall, we'll have to spend time moving them into the truck one by one later. Su killed the zombie in his hand and looked back at the big stone blocking the door. Because the two big stones blocked the two openings of the outpatient clinic, there were not many zombies to kill in the hall. Those zombies that crawled in from the cracks in the stones were basically killed by the 4 King Kong men guarding nearby. King Kong is not good at group attacks, and the killing power of Mo Weiming, Wandishan, and Gotzi is not great. If the stone at the entrance of the emergency hall is moved away, 2 or 3 people will have to be stationed by the truck, and 2 more people will be stationed in the hall to kill the zombies that sneak over from the outpatient department. In this way, those gangsters who are collecting medical supplies will follow Junjio and others to collect them.
Who will protect them? We are only on 1 floor now.
The higher we go, the more combat power we will need to protect the people who are collecting medical supplies, and then we will be even less manpower by then. In fact, the people guarding the truck outside should be guarded by someone who can attack in a group. Then 1 person is more than enough. At this time, Yi's importance is extremely highlighted. He can just set the fire in a circle around the outside of the truck to achieve the effect of a group kill. Su could indeed create huge waves, but those waves could only wash away the zombies, but they were not enough to kill them. 2 or 3 watermen were powerful, but she had to guard the truck alone. She would rather follow Junjio and Zhuoshijia to protect them. Just as Su was hesitating and wondering whether she should go to guard the truck outside by herself, outside the emergency hall, across a large parking lot, the zombies nearby slowly gathered around again. And on the street outside the parking lot, a convoy of cars came rushing over. The Volvo at the front was speeding and directly hit several zombies in front of it and rushed towards Su's RV and truck parked in the parking lot. His Volvo did a tailspin, knocking away several zombies that had already wandered to the side of the RV and stopped the car next to the RV. Within a second, Xia Yaoshen got out of the car, and the electric net on his body spread out, whizzing towards the zombies that were not dead yet and were struggling to crawl up. The cars that rushed in after the Volvo stopped one after another. The people got out and ran towards the zombies in the distance, actively fighting them. There was an indescribable sense of urgency in their postures. 2 people jumped out of one of the cars, and another person was carried out from the back of the car. Someone among them shouted, Su, where are you, doctor, doctor? Come out and save people, help people. While speaking, it seemed that Xia Yaoshe had already determined that Su and others were behind the boulder, so he covered his teammates and ran all the way to the door of the emergency hall. Su, who was inside the door, stretched his neck and looked through the glass wall next to the door. Among Xia Yaoshe's team, the person being carried was covered in blood, his clothes were torn, and his hanging arms swayed with the people who were carrying him. It seemed that the situation was very critical. Wandishan moved the stone. Su turned around and called Wandishan and at the same time shouted, Zhuoshijia, Junjiu, come and take a look. As she finished speaking, Wandishan ran forward and pushed the huge rock blocking the entrance of the emergency hall with one palm, creating a huge gap. Xia Yaoshe's teammates hurriedly carried the person into the hall through the gap. At the same time, Zhuoshijia and Junjiu also ran out of the emergency room.
Put him down. Put him down.
Junjiu shouted as he ran. He's been injured so badly, and you're still carrying him around. You'll get hurt again, don't you understand?
I'm sorry.
Zhang Anquan was holding the man's head. Hearing this, he hurriedly directed his teammates to put Su Xiaofeng on the ground. Seeing this, Junjiu stamped his feet anxiously and pointed at the emergency operating table that was still being held by 2 gangsters, shouting, Put it here, put it here. So Zhang Anquan and his teammates hurriedly and carefully carried Su Xiaofeng to the emergency operating table. At this time, Zhuoshijia came out, rolled up his sleeves, and instructed the nurse Liang Xiaoqi clean water, hemostatic forceps, medical gloves, cleaning clothes, disinfectant, cotton, scissors, and wine. Check if he is still conscious.
Yes.
Get ready now. Okay. At this moment, the energy in Liang Xiaoqi was different, and the energy in Zhuoshijia and Junjiu was also completely different. Junjiu picked up a mask he was carrying and put it on. Together with Zhuoshijia, they stood on the left and right of the operating table. Liang Xiaoqi rummaged around and took out a round basin made of iron and aluminum. She ran to Su Su, held the basin in both hands and raised it in front of Su Su. At first, Su Su didn't understand what it meant. She paused for a moment, then reacted. She snapped her fingers, and the basin was filled with water. Liang Xiaoqi hurriedly ran to the operating table with the basin and placed the water next to Su Xiaofeng's head. She then hurriedly turned around and searched through a pile of backpacks for cotton, hemostatic forceps, etc. The stomach is ruptured, and the intestines are all hanging out. If you don't know how to give first aid, don't try to save him. You're carrying him around like this. He's not dead to begin with, but you've already shaken him halfway to death. Zhuo Shijia stood beside the operating table, glanced at Su Xiaofeng's belly, and cursed angrily. At the same time, she couldn't wait for Liang Xiaoqi to turn over the scissors. She raised her eyes and glanced at Junjiu opposite her, and ordered, "Dr. Jun, I will tear off the injured person's clothes first. I will try to be careful not to touch the wound." Good. Junjiu, wearing a mask, had quickly checked Su Xiaofeng's pupils. She tilted her head to glance at the empty side of her body, and a layer of sweat broke out on her forehead. At this time, there should be a nurse to wipe her sweat, but the situation was urgent, and she couldn't care less. When Zhuo Shijia started to tear Su Xiaofeng's clothes, Junjiu had already leaned over to Su Xiaofeng's ear and shouted at a very fast speed, "Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?" Su Xiaofeng frowned and groaned softly, with a very painful expression. Junjiu was immediately overjoyed and said to Zhuo Shijia, who was sweating profusely, "Still conscious." Zhuo Shijia nodded, took the scissors handed over by Liang Xiaoqi, and carefully cut off the clothes near the wound on Su Xiaofeng's stomach. Junjiu took the sterile forceps handed over by Liang Xiaoqi, clamped a piece of cotton, dipped it in clean water, and cleaned the dirty blood on Su Xiaofeng's body while patting Su Xiaofeng's face and talking to him very quickly. "What's your name? Answer me, can you answer it?" Su Xiaofeng snorted again. Junjiu was still asking, her hands were moving quickly, and soon the cotton on the pliers was stained with blood. She threw the cotton into the trash can that Liang Xiaoqi found, and then she plied out a large piece of cotton and continued to clean up. After a while, she told Liang Xiaoqi. At this time, Zhuo Shijia had already cleaned the clothes around Su Xiaofeng's stomach. She looked at the huge cut on his stomach and the intestines that fell out of it, and she turned around and cursed Zhang Anquan in anger. "Idiot!" Zhang Anquan and others couldn't even raise their heads in front of the doctors and nurses. They were not angry even when they were called idiots. They just stared at Su Xiaofeng on the operating table nervously. As long as Su Xiaofeng was okay and their teammates were okay, it didn't matter even if the doctors called them idiots thousands of times. Xia Yaoshe quietly left the emergency room and was outside killing the zombies that gathered around him. Su Su was originally watching how Zhuo Shijia and the other two were demonstrating their own value. Seeing this, she winked at King Kong and whispered, "Are you going out to rob the monsters?" "No, I want to see Dr. Zhuo to save people." King Kong glanced at Xia Yaoshe, who was silently killing zombies outside. The other person has lightning abilities and is great at group attacks. He is just a wind ability user and can't win the fight. So, let Xia Yaoshe be the silent hero. King Kong didn't participate just now because he felt that Dr. Zhuo was more charming than the zombies at the moment. Well, Su Su didn't want to get involved. She glanced at Xia Yaoshe. Although she felt a little sorry to let Xia Yaoshe guard the gate alone, the momentum was so cool when Zhuo Shijia, Junjiu, and Liang Xiaoqi rescued people. Su Su planned to take a good look at it. Establish an intravenous access. Zhuo Shijia had already put on the sterile surgical gown Liang Xiaoqi had found for him and was putting on sterile gloves. While putting on the gloves, he said to Junjiu opposite him, "Dr. Jun, I will start to put the injured patient's intestines back." "Good." Junjiu nodded, her eyes sparkling behind the mask. She was also wearing sterile gloves and working with Zhuo Shijia. She began to widen the Su Xiaofeng's stomach to make it easier for Zhuo Shijia to put his intestines back. Zhuo Shijia moved quickly and carefully. Liang Xiaoqi was running around busily beside the operating table, starting to establish an intravenous access for Su Xiaofeng. Brother Pai, who was standing by, couldn't stand it anymore, So he took the initiative to instruct his subordinates to pour out the contents of the backpacks and place them on the floor one by one so that Liang Xiaoqi could see them clearly and it would be convenient for her to find them. Xia Yaoshi's subordinates and Su Sijingang, who were surrounding the operating table, also automatically made way for Liang Xiaoqi, who was running around. It didn't take long before Zhuo Shijia put Su Xiaofeng's intestines back. She nodded, with a layer of sweat on her forehead. Although the weather was not hot, and even a little cold, only doctors who perform the operation personally would understand that if a person's spirit is concentrated to the extreme, he will be covered in sweat. Stitch. When these two words came out of Zhuo Shijia's mouth, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Junju nodded and began the intensive finishing work. However, Zhuo Shijia turned around, took off the sterile hood on his head, and his legs went weak, and he was about to sit on the ground. King Kong was the first to float up. He stretched out his hands to hug Zhuo Shijia, whose feet were numb, and lifted him up sideways. Then he disappeared in a flash. Su had sharp eyes and seemed to see King Kong carrying Zhuo Shijia into the emergency room. She pursed her lips and smiled, not planning to chase him. She glanced at Junju, who was holding a needle holder and a suture thread, carefully and patiently suturing Su Xiaofeng's belly wound. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. What a charismatic profession and group of people this is. These doctors and nurses, their performance today was really amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Seeing that Su Xiaofeng seemed to be fine, Zhang Anquan turned around, walked to Su, and expressed his gratitude sincerely. His eyes were slightly red, and his hands were shaking slightly because he was too nervous. He took out a handful of crystal cores from his trouser pocket, handed them to Su, and said with a sob, Su, you see, before the end of the world, saving a person required money. Now it is the end of the world, and the money in the past is just a piece of waste paper. We have nothing to express our gratitude. Please accept these crystal cores. I didn't save them. Su put her hands behind her back, took a step back, rejected the crystal core that Zhang Anquan handed over, raised her eyebrows, looked at Junju and Liang Xiaoqi. Give it to them.
Fine.
I will definitely thank them. Definitely. But you must accept these crystal cores, definitely. Holding a handful of crystal cores in his hand, Zhang Anquan insisted that Su keep them. It was the doomsday, and everyone wanted to fight as a team. This team was led by Su, so it was only natural for him to give Su a handful of crystal cores as a thank you. Of course, they had previously laughed at Su for being a narrow-minded woman. Apart from accepting people like Yu, she only kept some burdens around her. What babies? 9 of them. None of the doctors and nurses have special powers. They can't kill monsters when they advance, and they can't warm the bed when they retreat. Brother Pai, the gangster, is quite capable, but his gang of gangsters are only good at finding supplies and killing zombies. Before today, Zhang Anquan and others had always looked at Su and his group with contempt. Now they finally realized how outrageous their mistake was. Just because their superpowers were stimulated doesn't mean they won't get hurt or need doctors and nurses. Just because they can kill zombies doesn't mean they can look down on the world. A doctor with a scalpel has the momentum to point at a group of people with superpowers and scold them and make them convinced. This is called value. Liang Xiaoqi. Su was so annoyed by Zhang Anquan's insistence that she stretched her neck and shouted. Liang Xiaoqi quickly ran over from the operating table and stood beside Su. Su pointed at Zhang Anquan, who was trying to give her the crystal core, and said, You register the number of crystal cores in his hand, then collect the crystal cores and divide them among the 3 of you, Dr. Zhua and Dr. Jun, to see if there are enough. When Su said this, it was obvious that a red color appeared on Zhang Anquan's face. She said this on purpose to make Zhang Anquan feel ashamed. To be honest, Su was not a beggar. It would only take her a few minutes to get such a large handful of crystal cores. Zhang Anquan still had that kind of machismo in his bones, and was a bit bureaucratic. Taking out a handful of crystal cores to think Su Su was like taking out a few big bills to give to Su Su before the end of the world. Who does Su Su think she is? Is she so bored that she doesn't need these few crystal cores? She is not a waitress who is collecting tips, and you are giving her a handful of crystal cores as a thank you? Su Su never takes such small advantages. Her pride will not allow it. Okay. Liang Xiaoqi held the crystal core with both hands and placed it directly in front of Zhang Anquan. At this time, Zhang Anquan also realized that his behavior of giving the crystal core to Su Su was inappropriate. Su Su's vision was not as small as he thought. The bigger the vision of a woman, the more she would look down on these small favors. So Liang Xiaoqi's hands appeared just in time, as if she was collecting medical treatment and surgery fees. So naturally, Zhang Anquan took the opportunity to put the crystal cores in his hand into Liang Xiaoqi's hands. After putting one handful in, he remembered what Su Su said, divide it among the three of you, and see if it's enough. So he took out all the crystal cores on his body and put them all in Liang Xiaoqi's hands. Before the end of the world, treating illnesses and saving lives required money. Hospitals had clear price tags and the cost details would be clearly calculated for the patient's family. Although death is very common after the end of the world, how much a life is worth depends on its weight among teammates, relatives, and friends. Zhang Anquan knew Su Xiaofeng before the end of the world. Su Xiaofeng was also his brother-in-law. Thinking of his wife who had turned into a zombie and died at his hands, Zhang Anquan's heart trembled. He called out to his teammates, "Quick, take out all your crystal cores. I'll lend them to you. I'll return them after this mission." Seeing that Xia Yaoshi's teammates were taking out crystal cores and Liang Xiaoqi's hands were almost full of crystal cores, Su Su raised her eyebrows and was slightly satisfied with the price of saving people. As for Liang Xiaoqi, she had been holding her hands to receive the crystal cores until Su Su said enough. This was until more than 10 of Xia Yaoshi's teammates had taken all the crystal cores they had collected this time, and there was no more crystal core left. Only then did Liang Xiaoqi turn around and look at Su Su. Holding the piles of crystal cores, she looked at Su Su with a questioning look on her face and asked, "How should I divide so many crystal cores?" Brother Pai came over, took out a plastic bag, and asked Liang Xiaoqi to put the pile of crystal cores into the plastic bag. Su Su smiled, waved her hand lazily, and said to Liang Xiaoqi, who was asking, "You can divide it however you want. It's what you three deserve. No one else will take half of it from you."
Oh.
Liang Xiaoqi suddenly felt like a wealthy woman. She carefully picked up the bag of crystal cores and turned to discuss with Dr. Jun and Dr. Zhua. Su Su stood there watching for a long time. When she looked back at the sky, she found that it had already dawned. She felt a little hungry, so she walked out of the emergency hall alone and prepared to go back to the RV to find something to eat. The zombies outside the emergency hall were almost cleared out by Xia Yaoshi alone. When Su Su walked out, Xia Yaoshi was setting up an electric net not far away, jumping rapidly with his tall figure. At the same time, he looked back at Su Su, with his lips tightly pursed and his brows slightly frowned, as if he had something to say to Su Su. Su Su had nothing to say to Xia Yaoshi. She was about to if she was hungry, so she glanced at Xia Yaoshi quickly, walked for a while, got into her RV, and started looking for something to eat by rummaging through the drawers. There were quite a few snacks in the RV, all put there by the young nurse Liang Xiaoqi. Su Su glanced at the egg yolk pie in her hand and felt that it was a bit unnutritious, so she took out a pack of noodles from the kitchen cabinet, found a small pot, put some water in it, and started cooking the noodles leisurely. There was a small induction cooker on the kitchen counter. Su Su was waiting for the water to boil when someone knocked on the window outside the kitchen. She straightened her back, pulled open the white curtains, and saw that it was Xia Yaoshi standing outside the window, raising a slender finger, ready to knock on the glass window again. Su Su opened the glass window and looked at Xia Yaoshi. While putting noodles into the boiling water, she asked, "What's the matter?" Xia Yaoshi's brows were still slightly furrowed, and his handsome face was serious. He turned his head to look at the zombies staggering towards him in the distance. Under the pale yellow sunlight, he looked back at Su Su and said, "Su Su, let's build a hospital." I'll let my people help you transport medical supplies. Hawaii? As if she felt that Xia Yaosher's train of thought was a little strange, Su held 2 chopsticks in her hand, stirring the noodles in the pot, but her eyes were looking at Xia Yaosher, wanting to know what Xia Yaosher's intention was in coming over and telling her this. Because we need it. In a word, Xia Yaosher answered very straightforwardly and frankly. His teammates needed medical resources, and other survivor teams also needed medical resources. Su now had medical resources in her hands. If these resources were left unused, it would be a loss for everyone. You need them? I have to build a hospital for you? Su laughed sarcastically, narrowed her eyelids slightly, and her curled eyelashes cast a small shadow under her eyes. She picked up the cooked noodles and put them into the bowl, and continued. If you want me to build a hospital, it's not impossible. I will clearly mark the price, not work in vain, and provide medical treatment according to needs. I am not allowed to default on debts, delay debts, or owe debts. If I don't have crystal cores, I will use materials to pay for them. That's natural. Xia Yaosher also smiled, looking at Su as if he was looking at a little girl who had to bargain with adults. He nodded. I will never let you suffer a loss, and I will never allow others to make you suffer a loss. Okay, you guys help drag the medical supplies back. Su originally had this idea and wanted to build a hospital to facilitate the convenience of her parents and Xiao AI. She was thinking in her mind that since she wanted to build a hospital, it would be a bit of a loss if it was not open to the public. However, once it was open to the public, things would become more complicated. The most complicated issue is the debt problem. She is not worried about the debts owed by Xia Yaosher and other teams of superpowers. She is just worried about those ordinary survivors who come for medical treatment. Those ordinary survivors are the most numerous, the most difficult to deal with, and the most difficult to control. Without crystal cores, abilities, or supplies, they were lying in front of the hospital. Should the doctors and nurses save them or not? If they didn't save them, watching these ordinary survivors die would go against the nature of the angels in white to save the dying and heal the wounded. If they saved them, they really couldn't afford the crystal cores and supplies to pay for the medical expenses, and there was a great possibility that they would stay in the hospital. Su was thinking in her mind. The golden sunlight shone on this side of the RV. Su stood in the window, looking down and fiddling with her noodles. Xia Yaosher leaned against the side of the RV and suddenly asked, Is you treating you well?
Fine.
That's good. Xia Yaosher chatted with Su for a few words, then straightened up and went back to killing zombies. Su looked at Xia Yaosher's back through the small window for a while, closed the window, sat on the sofa with the bowl of noodles in his hands and started eating noodles. At this time, in the emergency room of the hospital, Zhuo Shijia and King Kong were sitting on 2 stools, staring at each other. Zhuo Shijia didn't quite understand why King Kong made her sit in this secluded corner, and she looked like she had something to say. She was quietly waiting for what King Kong was about to say, and by the way, she took a rest for her feet. But King Kong just sat opposite her, his hands clenched into fists, resting on his knees, his eyes wide open like a cow. He seemed quite stubborn, but he pursed his lips tightly, staring at Zhuo Shijia motionlessly. The clock on the wall was ticking. Zhuo Shijia couldn't help but blink. King Kong immediately lowered his head. There was a strange black and red on his dark face. He scratched his short hair and looked a little embarrassed. Just as he was about to speak, Liang Xiaoqi ran in. Dr. Zhuo, what should we do with this bag of crystal cores? This is the medical fee paid by the patient's friend. Dr. Jun said that she is not a superpower and can't use it. Her share will go to Su. I am not a superpower either, so I decided to give my share to my idol. What about you, Dr. Zhuo? Give them all to Su. I have no objection. Zhuo Shijia tilted his head, moving his gaze away from King Kong's face and looking at Liang Xiaoqi. As he spoke, he stood up and shook his sore and numb hands and feet, then nodded to King Kong again and said, Thank you. Since you haven't thought of what to tell me, I'll go and do something else. Okay, Dr. Zhuo. You are busy, Dr. Zhuo. Please take care. King Kong's face turned red. He stood up. The burly man bowed, and said goodbye to Zhuo Shijia. People who didn't know the situation might think that Zhuo Shijia had saved the lives of his family, otherwise why would King Kong be so humble? Everyone started to work in an orderly manner. Su finished her noodles in the RV and took a nap on the sofa. When Liang Xiaoqi got on the RV with a large bag of medical supplies, Su woke up from her light sleep and looked at Liang Xiaoqi and asked, "Are you done?" "It's done." Liang Xiaoqi was holding a large bag of cotton wool. She thought for a moment, stuffed the cotton wool into the cabinet under the kitchen, and said naggingly, "Dr. Jun said that Su Xiaofeng's condition is still unclear. He suggested moving him into the medical vehicle and bringing him back with us. We need to observe his condition for a few days, and if necessary, we may need to give him some blood transfusion." "Where did you get the medical vehicle?" "Oh, every hospital has 1 or 2 medical vehicles for cadres. They're well-equipped, and even simple surgeries can be performed on them." "So, awesome?" "It's really awesome." Liang Xiaoqi said this with a sense of pride. Brother Pai and his subordinates drove over. Look, that's a medical vehicle and an ambulance. Our hospital has 2 medical vehicles and 10 ambulances. Drive them all back." Su sat on the sofa and followed the direction of Liang Xiaoqi's finger. She found that several large white trucks were starting outside the emergency parking lot. Before, because there were too many cars and many zombies in the parking lot, she had not noticed that there were more than a dozen medical ambulances among these cars. Now the cars were moving, and at first glance they looked quite new and very eye-catching. This time, Brother Pai brought out a total of 15 subordinates. Considering the need to load medical supplies, each of them drove a car. This time, 12 medical ambulances were added, so naturally there were not enough people to drive their own cars back. Fortunately, Xia Yaoshi's teammates came to help. Pai Ge's people drove the medical ambulance back first and loaded as much medical supplies as possible on the ambulance. After they drove the medical ambulances back, they came back to move the medical supplies and drove back their city SUVs that had been modified by the fortune teller. During this gap, Xia Yaoshi's people will join forces with King Kong and his 4 companions to help clean up the supplies in the hospital and at the same time load medical supplies into Brother Pai's car. Jun Jie will take care of Su Xiaofeng and return to the Apple Villa area with Brother Pai's medical vehicle. The 2 teams became unprecedentedly united because of Su Xiaofeng's incident. They went back and forth like industrious little bees, moving the hospital bit by bit. Near the afternoon, Zhuo Shijia drove the RV. Su sat in the co-pilot seat and towed a large RV of Western medicine. When they passed the obstacles set up by the troops, their group finally attracted the attention of the troop leaders. The army's defense line has been pushed to the outside of Pai Ge's hotel. The zombies outside are gathering more and more. Su's side is short of manpower. King Kong and Pai Ge both became drivers to transport medical supplies, so Zhuo Shijia stepped on as the driver. Because they were in a hurry, Su did his best and created 3 watermen. 2 of them were holding Yu's sabers, and 1 of them was holding an ice knife. They were working hard to clear the way for the RV. In front, the soldiers behind the roadblocks were also using machine guns to shoot at the zombies outside. Not far away, behind a building, there was a man in a straight military uniform, about 30 years old, with a black leather eye patch on his face. On his extremely handsome face, his single eye flashed a cold light. He was sitting behind the floor-to-ceiling glass window, with an eagle standing on his shoulder. The eagle's eyes, like his, flashed a cold and ruthless light. 1 man, 1 eagle, 3 eyes, all looking at the street outside the window. A few cars had just passed by on the street, and outside the roadblock, an RV and a truck were breaking through the encirclement of the zombies and were gradually approaching the roadblock. Behind him, a soldier knocked on the door and walked in with a document in his hand. He stood behind the man and said in a low and serious voice, "Commander, we have already found out that these 2 teams live in the Apple Villa district. Before the apocalypse, it was a high-end villa district in Xiangcheng. The supplies they dragged in this time were all medical supplies." "Medical supplies?" The 30-year-old man, wearing white gloves on his fingers, folded his fingers, placed them under his chin, tapping his fingers gently, with a slight curve at the corner of his lips, as if he thought the group of people in the Apple Villa district were quite intriguing. In the end times, they didn't even look for food, but collected medical supplies so generously. Then, the man suddenly asked, "Among the people with special abilities that I asked you to recruit from the survivors last time, was there one named Liang? Mention her position and let her be responsible for recruiting those superpowers in the Apple Villa district." The one-eyed commander tilted his head slightly, pointing to the 3 water men jumping among the zombies outside the window, and ordered, "Also, find out who the water-type supernatural being who can summon 3 water men is. It's a pity to leave such a strong water-type supernatural power in the hands of ordinary people." "Yes." The men behind him stood at attention and received the order, then handed the document in his hand to the one-eyed man in front. "Commander, I found something interesting while investigating the Apple Villa district. Take a look." Hearing what his men behind him were saying with great interest, the one-eyed man turned around, took the document, and flipped it open. The first page was Yi Yu's personal information. He immediately sneered and whispered, "These people are lucky. They are not dead. Do they have fire abilities?" Before he finished reading the information, the one-eyed commander slammed the document in his hand shut. He turned around, his shiny black military boots stepping on the floor tiles, and ordered, "Tell this death squad to report back to the team immediately." "Yes." The sonorous and powerful voice echoed in the air in the room, full of confidence, as if there was no worry at all about whether Yi Yu would accept the order. At this moment, Su on the street had already commanded 3 watermen to successfully clear the way. Under the fire from the opposite side, Zhuoshijia drove the RV into the roadblock, and the truck behind them followed their car and also quickly passed the roadblock. Then they were stopped by men in front of them who were wearing uniforms and white coats. The men in charge of medical care came up with electronic thermometers in their hands and took the temperature of Su and Zhuoshijia one by one. After registering their names, addresses, and temperatures, they released the RV and left. In the departing RV, Su sat in the passenger seat and looked back. The men in the regular team began to dismantle the roadblocks again. They pushed the roadblocks forward bit by bit. Although they had only advanced a few meters in a whole day, the overall scope of the safe zone was visibly expanding. In a few days, when the regular team lets in the survivor team, they will probably collect a certain amount of crystal cores and supplies. And according to this historical process, I'm afraid that the regular team has already begun to secretly absorb people with special abilities from the public a long time ago. The base will be completed within the next year, and Xiangqing will be one of the first bases established in the south. However, Xiangqing Base is not one of the 4 major bases in the future Doomsday, because it only survived for about 2 or 3 years and was finally completely obliterated in the Doomsday. If you really want to count, the Xiangqing Base is a small base in the early days of the Doomsday. The leader of these men at this time is a 30-year-old commander named Lu Yin, who has the ability to control animals. He is cold and ruthless, and is the same kind of person as Liang. And he might be someone even more terrifying than Liang. Su doesn't like to associate with such people. This matter started after Lu Yin recruited civilians with special abilities. At that time, he promised those civilians with special abilities that he would organize them into a regular team, pay them monthly salaries, take care of their families, and provide them with various welfare policies after the base was built, etc. This attracted a large number of civilians with special abilities to join his team. He organized these people with special abilities who were recruited from the public into an independent team called the Special Ability Vanguard Team. What is the Special Ability Vanguard Team? It is just like what Xia Yaoshi had done before, with the people with special abilities leading the way in front and the ordinary teammates firing a few shots from behind. This is the Special Ability Vanguard Team. After the establishment of the Superpower Vanguard Team, Lu Yin did what he promised in the next 2 years. Before and after the base was built, he gave these superpowers many preferential treatments, but at the same time, he also used these preferential policies to restrain and lure these superpowers step by step. The treatment of these superpowers was that, on the surface, they had unlimited glory, but in reality, they were full of dangers. Many things may not seem obvious while they are happening, but Su is a reborn person. She looks at the entire historical event from the perspective of someone who has experienced it. People like Lu Yin are always unwilling to live a dull life and are extremely ambitious, so they always use all kinds of fancy names to lure the psychics to the most dangerous places. What about defending the base and eliminating hidden dangers? In fact, most of the time, some dangers can be avoided, but Lu Yin prefers quick success and lets the psychics rush forward regardless of their lives. He has never regarded other people's lives as a life. In fact, the Xiangqing base did not need to decline so quickly. It was just that Lu Yin consumed too many psychics and expanded the base too quickly, resulting in the death of many of the few psychics who had already been built just 2 years ago. The few who survived did so because they saw it too clearly and could not stand Lu Yin's exploitation, so they ran away, and eventually the Xiangqing base slowly declined. Of course, people die for money, and birds die for food. It can be said that a large number of people with special abilities were willing to be used by Lu Yin at the beginning. That doesn't matter. For the various preferential policies given by Lu Yin, they would risk their lives and go to any dangerous place. But all of this has nothing to do with Su Su. What she wanted was stability, safety, and a healthy and ordinary life for her family. Why did she have to charge into battle with a big belly? Even if she was given a mountain made of crystal cores, she would not go. In her previous life, Su Su was timid and cowardly. At that time, she did not know that she had superpowers. She lived every day like most ordinary survivors today. Apart from running for her life, she was thinking about where to get the next meal. So naturally, she had no chance to catch Lu Yin's eye. When she found out that she had superpowers, she also knew that she was pregnant. So after thinking it over and over again, and struggling again and again, she decided not to work for Lu Yin's regular team. Later, she and Xie Qingyan stayed in the survivor team of Xiongda University, and they could exchange for enough supplies to feed themselves and Xie Qingyan. Sometimes they could even have some food left over to exchange for some crystal cores to save. Later, she gave birth to Xiao AI, and her life was manageable again. It was even more impossible for her to go to Lu Yin to join in the fun. Then, with the birth of Xiao AI, she gradually grew up, and the Xiangqing base established by Lu Yin was beginning to fail. Su Su followed the Xiongda team and left the Xiangqing base early. In this life, Su Su's supernatural power has swept everyone's senses with a crushing momentum from the very beginning. Although she wanted to keep a low profile, she knew that she couldn't do it no matter what. Since she couldn't keep a low profile, she might as well let go and continue to be high profile. After all, she would definitely not get involved with Lu Yin. She only planned to stay in Xiangqing base until Xiao AI was born. As long as she waited for Xiao AI to be born, she would be able to go anywhere. But if Su Su did not get involved with Lu Yin, would Yi Yu? If Yi Yu and his team fell into the hands of someone like Lu Yin, it would be better for them to fall into the hands of Liang. At least Liang was a woman. She did not have the rampant ambition of Lu Yin. In the end, she could still save Yi Yu's life. But Lu Yin, perhaps in the end, not even Yi Yu's body would be left. Thinking of this, Su Su put one hand on the window and pressed her temple with her fingers. She didn't know where Yi Yu was now. She and Yi Yu had stopped using cell phones a long time ago. Otherwise, she could have asked Yi Yu what he thought specifically. "What are you sighing about?" Zhuo Shijia, who was driving the RV, frowned slightly and tilted his head to look at Su Su. Pay attention to prenatal education. Pregnant women should smile more so that the child's personality will be more cheerful in the future. Is that so? Su Su raised her eyebrows when she mentioned Xiao AI and unconsciously revealed a gentle expression. She couldn't tell Zhuo Shijia about her worries, so she had to change her mind and asked Zhuo Shijia, before the end of the world, what would your hospital do if it encountered someone who defaulted on medical bills? What can we do? Zhuo Shijia smiled indifferently. He refuses to pay for your medical expenses, so you won't treat him? Restrict his freedom and don't let him leave the hospital? Call a bunch of hooligans to his house to collect debts? In order to reduce losses, the hospital will deduct the money from the salaries of the doctors and nurses on duty. This is the dumbest and most beneficial way for the hospital. So scary? Yeah, it's just that scary. That won't do. How can you deduct money from the doctors' and nurses' salaries? Su shook her head and frowned slightly. As she thought, she said, "It's the end of the world now. The hospital's charter needs to be revised. If someone is dragged to us, we can save him, but we won't pay for his medical expenses after saving him, right? You restrict his personal freedom and leave him to do laundry, bedsheets, chores, and build houses to pay off debts. Why don't you do it? Are you lazy? Let Brother Pai beat him up first, and then send some hooligans to threaten and intimidate him every day." TSK, Zhuo Shijia turned the steering wheel and drove the RV into the Apple Villa district, asking casually, "Don't tell me you are planning to open a hospital." "Why not?" Su had a grin on her face. "We should clearly mark the prices and charge according to the regulations. We should charge the same as before the apocalypse and the same as after the apocalypse. There should be detailed information on registration fees, examination fees, medical treatment fees, bed fees, and other charges. If we don't have enough crystal cores, we can exchange them for supplies." Zhuo Shijia turned his head speechlessly and looked at Su. Finally, after thinking for a while, he said, "If you have decided to open a hospital, I will naturally agree. After all, I also want to go back to my old business. But this is not a trivial matter. I have to communicate with Brother Pai. I am afraid that his people will be too busy by then." The gangsters not only had to take care of the 9 babies, but also had to go out to find supplies. After they came back, they had to greet those who owed money over and over again. Zhuo Shijia was a little worried that Brother Pai would not do it. After all, people are made of iron and steel. It is easy to imagine how many people would not pay their debts once the hospital opened. There were only 19 gangsters. How could they greet them all? "If you are too busy, let Brother Pai expand the team of gangsters." Su was now determined to open a hospital. She nodded, looking at her villa, and smiled at Zhuo Shijia. "See, Brother Pai has experience and vision. He can definitely see at first glance who has the potential to be a gangster." After a pause, Su continued, "I thought about it and decided to open a high-end hospital in the Apple Villa district. We won't do any extra publicity. Those who know about it will come. We don't have to make it known to everyone. But those who come will still be treated whether they have crystal cores or not. I hope to have more people without crystal cores come, as we are short of manpower to do the hard work."
You.
I wanted to ask, is Su's values really suitable for prenatal education? Who would open a hospital and run it like a black-hearted hospital, and even work with the underworld? And want to hire more coolies? But Su's words were so natural that Zhuo Shijia couldn't say a word of rebuttal. Perhaps in extraordinary times, extraordinary measures must be taken. Otherwise, the survivors will think that our hospital is a welfare home and will not pay for their medical treatment. They will act as if it is their own thing, and we will be so angry that they will die. Are there not many such things before the end of the world? So, in the end, Zhuo Shijia agreed with what Su said. As soon as the RV was parked in front of the Su family villa, she took advantage of the night to discuss the opening of the hospital with Junjiu, Dr. Hong, and the 5 nurses. After getting the consent of the doctors and nurses, she planned to hold a meeting with Brother Pai to discuss the specific details. Watching Zhuo Shijia hurriedly get off the RV, Su also opened the door and jumped out. As soon as she got off the car, she saw her parents standing in the night. Looking at her worried and angry face, Su felt a little empty in her heart and felt guilty. She pretended to yawn and went to greet her parents. Originally, Su's father and mother were extremely angry and dissatisfied with Su's ignorance of the seriousness of the matter and going out while being more than 3 months pregnant. But before they could scold Su, they saw that Su looked extremely tired and yawned continuously as she walked. Su's father and mother could only look at each other helplessly, holding back their anger, and let Su go back to sleep. After Su woke up, they would find an opportunity to teach this naughty child a lesson. With a snicker on her face, Su safely passed the test of her parents, returned to her bedroom at ease, washed up, closed the curtains, and prepared to go to bed. It was already late at night, and their convoy and Xia Yaoshi's convoy had already returned one after another with the last load of supplies. Su Su was slowly closing her eyes as she heard the sound of a car outside the window, when suddenly there was a knock on the bedroom door. Su Su frowned, stood up, walked barefoot to the door, opened it, and saw Zhuo Shijia standing outside her door. "I forgot to give you this." Zhuo Shijia picked up a plastic bag, which was half filled with crystal cores. She handed the bag to Su Su. "We don't have any superpowers, so we don't need these, so we unanimously agreed to give you all these crystal cores and use them to buy your family's purified water, vegetables, and supplies. But the supplies were given to you by Brother Pai." Su Su hesitated and took the crystal core handed to her by Zhuo Shijia. If she remembered correctly, this bag of crystal cores should be the surgery fee paid by Zhang Anquan for Su Xiaofeng. Zhuo Shijia gave it all to her, so shouldn't he give some to Brother Pai? Brother Pai said that he still owes you a lot of crystal cores. They have been using your water and eating your vegetables a lot during this period. Zhuo Shijia, who was standing at the door, smiled and waved at Su Su, not caring too much about the details of the accounts. Anyway, they all regarded Su Su as the big boss and they all followed Su Su, so it was natural for them to give the unused crystal cores to Su Su. What's more, when the hospital opens in the future, Su Su will get a share of the profits, so don't worry too much about such a small amount of crystal cores now. After saying this, Zhuo Shijia turned and went downstairs, leaving Su Su holding a plastic bag of crystal cores, standing inside the door, tilting her head and thinking for a long time. This equivalent conversion relationship was a bit confusing. She took Pai Go, Zhuo Shijia, and others out to get supplies. She got the crystal cores and Pai Go, Zhuo Shijia, and others got the supplies. After that, Pai Go and Zhuo Shijia and others still wanted to give her the crystal cores, saying that they didn't need them and they would use them to buy her water and vegetables. But usually people like Pai Ge and Yi would often send a lot of supplies to her home. It was too late, and Su Su was too tired. Her mind was numb, and she couldn't figure it out in the end. She had to carry the crystal cores back to her room to rest, and wanted to wait until she woke up the next day to calculate this equivalent relationship. But the next morning everyone was busy, and the reason was what Su Su said to Zhuo Shijia last night, that she wanted to open a hospital. The medical building had been cleaned by Pai Ge's people inside and out. 5 nurses fed milk and changed diapers for 9 babies, leaving 1 nurse to look after the babies, while the other 4 started washing and scrubbing. The white sheets and quilts brought back from the hospital were hung all over the front and back of the medical building to dry in the morning. After checking Su Xiaofeng's bed, Junjiu, together with Zhuo Shijia, Dr. Hong, King Kong, and 8 other Special Forces soldiers, began to rummage through the piles of medical supplies. At this time, a small line had formed in front of the medical building. They were all the psychics from Xia Yaoshi's side. They had some scratches and bruises on their bodies, the kind that they could normally get by with a little bit of gritting their teeth, but now they all came to help the medical building get some business started. Qin Yu and Rui were so busy that their feet were almost flying. 1 big and 1 small, they were running around with bed sheets in their arms. The mother and son also had the task of taking Li Xiaoyu's temperature, so at this moment, they were just short of having 6 hands. Even Su's father and mother came out of the wall to help, but they were both old, so they were just asked to move things and do some light chores. So fast? Su took a bowl of soup and walked out of the gate of the wall. While drinking the soup, she asked Brother Pai, who was walking around the area with his son in his arms, basking in the rare sunshine of early spring. When he heard Su's words, he stopped and turned to look at the bustling medical building behind him. He nodded and smiled with wrinkles on his face, saying Liang Xiaoqi and the other young nurses were excited last night. They even copied a set of feed details overnight. They haven't figured out anything yet this morning, but they're already shouting that they want to open the business. Isn't it true that nothing has been sorted out yet? We spent the whole day pulling medical supplies yesterday. Some of those supplies were piled in the yard of the medical building, and some were piled on the truck. They haven't been sorted out yet, but they have already opened. The funny thing is that the superpowers on Xia Yaoshi's side are playing with Liang Xiaoqi and other young nurses. They are lining up one by one, waiting to enter the medical building to see a doctor. Su yawned, ignored the group of adults who seemed to be playing house, teased little Su lay in Brother Pai's arms, and turned to do her daily tasks. Her daily routine was to drain water into the large water tanks on the roof of the Su family villa. Under Su's father's day and night research, his skills in construction are improving day by day. Not only did he install a water purification system for the Su family villa, he also opened several pipes from the water tank on his own villa. Those pipes extend directly from the roof to several villas nearby. Therefore, all the people who follow Su can use clean water by turning on the faucet in the villa where they live. At this moment, on the other side of the Apple Villa district, Li Ying, wearing a military green military uniform skirt, a dark green tweed military coat, a female officer's hat on her head, her long hair curled into big waves, and a delicate yet elegant makeup, led a team of soldiers in a heroic manner, carrying several documents, and visited Xia Yaoshi and Xia Qingyan. It was a pity that Xia Yaoshi didn't come out to greet her. Last night, Xia Yaoshi was the last person to return to the Apple Villa district. He dragged a large truck of medical supplies to the medical building to unload them. He was busy until 2 or 3 in the morning before he went to bed. It was only 8 o'clock in the morning, so Xia Yaoshi naturally didn't get up that early. Li Ying sat on the sofa in the living room of Xia Yao's family. Behind her stood 2 soldiers with guns. Opposite her sat Xia Qingyan, who was flipping through the army conscription order brought by Li Ying. He nodded as he flipped through the order, and his handsome face showed a very satisfied look. I've checked it out. The conditions are very good in all aspects. However, there are many survivors here. Will Commander Lu Ying really give each of us a job so that the survivors here can support themselves? That's natural. As long as your eldest brother Xia Yaoshi can bring his team of superpowers to join the superpower vanguard of the army, our commander can arrange for all of you to have a self-sufficient job. Li Ying had a very decent smile on her face, which made people feel that she was trustworthy at first glance. She also answered Xia Qingyan's questions in a very detailed and patient manner. Her attitude was full of patience, but in her heart, she actually despised Xia Qingyan. Li Ying did not think that Xia Qingyan could represent Xia Yaoshi, so she did not have much hope for Xia Qingyan. But Li Ying has lived in the Apple Villa district for many days. During this time, she has also done her homework on the people on Xia Qingyan and Xia Yaoshi's side. According to her investigation, there is a wood-type mutant named Feifei next to Xia Qingyan. She has very good abilities and is said to be able to promote the growth of plants. If plants can be stimulated to grow, vegetables can be stimulated to grow. If Feifei can be brought into Lu Yin's team, who knows how many soldiers can be fed. Although Lu Ying did not specifically explain this matter, it is easy to imagine that if she can get this girl named Feifei for the army, it will definitely be a meritorious deed. If that's the case, I will definitely persuade my brother to join you. Xia Qingyan smiled and closed the document in front of him. Then he seemed to remember something, looked up at Li Ying, frowned, and asked, Commander is so eager to recruit talents. I wonder if he also knows something about the other group of people in our Apple Villa district? You mean Su's group? Li Ying looked at Xia Qingyan, carefully observing the expression on this man's face. She wanted to know if this man knew that Su was pregnant with his child. He should not be aware of this. Otherwise, why would he allow Su and Yu to get so close? At the very least, they won't keep silent and hide in a corner of the Apple Villa district, doing nothing. As expected, Li Ying could not see any love for Su on Xia Qingyan's face. She only saw jealousy, anger, and a certain madness of revenge. She only heard Xia Qingyan shaking his head and saying, I advise Miss Li not to have any ideas about Su and her group. They have very bad character. Recruiting them into the regular team would be a blasphemy to the regular team. They are just a mob, parasites of society. At this moment, Xia Qingyan did not think that Li Ying might know Su's group. In his eyes, how could a woman like Li Ying, who looked very tough and capable, be compared with Su's group of burdens? He had never looked at Su's people. Except for Yu, Xia Qingyan did not know anyone and did not want to know them. His daily life was just staying in the villa, eating and sleeping, imagining that he was the spiritual leader of a group of survivors and how to lead this group of people to live well, and so on. Really? Haha, then I really want to meet this group of people. Liang was increasingly disappointed with Xie Qingyan. If she were Su Su, she would not continue to be with a man like Xie Qingyan. It was already this time, but she still could not see the situation clearly. She thought that the original person was still the person before the end of the world. In fact, it was enough for a person to be useful. As long as he was useful, being a mob, a parasite in society, or having bad character were all secondary. After all, although Li Ying joined Lu Yin's regular team, she did not feel that she was persuading other psychics to join with any lofty purpose. Her purpose was simple, which was to get promoted and live a superior life by stepping on the blood and tears of others. She also saw clearly that what Lu Yin wanted was a group of psychics who could work for him, not some talents who could jointly build a beautiful home for the base. It's a pity to leave Yi Yu and his group to be ruined by Lu Yin, but so much time has passed and Su Su's belly should be bigger, so it's a good opportunity to let you leave Su Su. Coincidentally, Yi Yu is also a member of the regular team and should be more obedient to Lu Yin's call. As long as Liang puts in a little effort to rebuild the relationship with Yi Yu and others in the regular team, there will be no problem at all.
So Li Ying decided to encourage Xie Ying to provoke Su Su.
It would be best if Su Su took the initiative to tell Xie Qingyan about her pregnancy. Maybe because of the baby in her belly, Su Su and Xie Qingyan would rekindle their old love. That would be the best result. If they couldn't rekindle their old love, when Liang exposed Su Su's pregnancy and Xie Qingyan happened to be there, that scene would be enough to make Yi Yu very angry. As for Lu Yin's desire to have Su Su join the regular team and solve the water problem for the entire regular team because of her special abilities, Liang felt that the chances of success were very small. Not to mention anything else, Su Su was pregnant now. Would she join the regular team and fight to the death? But if there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that Su Su can join Lu Yin's regular team, Liang will have made another great contribution. Thinking about this, Liang said to Xie Qingyan, I have checked the relationship between you and Su Su. I heard that you used to be a very close couple. Of course, if you can persuade Su Su to join our team of superpowers, we will arrange a special position for you. As she spoke, Liang handed over a letter of appointment, which said that someone was appointed as the base's so and so officer. The name was a horizontal line, which meant that Liang could fill in any name she wanted. The so and so officer was actually a title made up by Lu Yin. Anyway, it was the end of the world, and the base had not been established yet. What position did he want? Isn't it just a random creation? When she came, she had already made a plan in her mind. Su Su's ability to let go was exactly what the regular team needed. Whether Xie Qingyan could convince Su Su or not, it would be no loss to Liang. Of course, it would be great if Xie Qingyan could convince Su Su, and it would be even better if he couldn't. Liang didn't want to finally separate Yi Yu and Su Su, and then have them get together in the regular team. Looking at the appointment letter in front of him, Xie Qingyan was somewhat tempted by the position of officer so and so, but it was an organization.
Wolf Shushwegri?
A person with a weak constitution like Su Su would have to live in the camp every day after joining the army, participate in high-intensity regular team training every day, and obey the arrangements of his superiors to go on missions. Would Su Su agree to such a hard life? Xie Qingyan was not sure, but he was really tempted by the appointment letter. After thinking for a long time, he nodded and agreed. I can only try my best to help you talk to her. After all, she is different from my eldest brother and doesn't listen to me anymore. If Su Su doesn't want to, can anyone else do it? That depends on how strong this person's ability is. You should know that the water made by Su Su is enough for dozens of people to drink until they are full. You should try your best to persuade Su Su first, and we can talk about the rest later. Liang understood what Xie Qingyan meant and probably realized that he wanted to push Fei Fei out to replace Su Su. This is a good idea, as it suits her wishes both ways. Xie Qingyan can't convince Su Su, so he can use Fei Fei instead. In this way, Liang can get the reward as well. After chatting with Xie Qingyan for a few more sentences and describing a beautiful blueprint for the future base to Xie Qingyan, Liang stood up and said goodbye. Xia Qingyan personally sent Ling out the door. At this time, just outside the door, a peach tree was in full bloom, and the pink petals fluttered in the wind and flew into the air. Under the peach tree, there stood a woman wearing a black short down jacket. Her pearl collar set off her short hair, and she looked very lively and pretty. Her hands were placed on the peach tree. As the peach petals fell, big pink peaches were slowly growing among the branches. Ling looked for a while, but didn't go forward to recognize the woman who was giving birth to the peach tree. She didn't need to recognize her. Who else could it be but Fei Fei? Xia Qingyan would send Fei Fei to her sooner or later, so why rush to get to know her now? Ling is no longer the same as before. She is no longer the little water-based psychic who followed behind Yiyu's team and was eager to get into Yiyu's team, nor is she the pitiful little girl who kept observing Su Su and wanted to learn a trick from her. Li Ying is an officer now. As long as she does a good job, even if she does not have powerful superpowers, she will still be able to call the shots in the base in the future. She should be in such a position, and others should come to her to establish relationships and curry favor with her. Now, she has finally stood in the right position and done something that makes her feel comfortable. A soldier standing next to the military jeep parked outside the yard saluted immediately after seeing Ling coming out and asked, "Team leader, are we going back now?" "No rush, I haven't been back to Apple Villa for a long time, I'll take a look around." Ling curved her rosy lips, revealing an intriguing smile on her delicate makeup. She pulled together her military woolen coat, bent down, and got into the jeep. It was so easy to get into this kind of military jeep. Looked just like Su Su had it, she would have the same. In late February and early March, the temperature in early spring was sometimes hot and sometimes cold, and the plants grew irregularly. Some began to sprout long ago, and some had not yet shown any signs of growth. People were also a little out of rhythm when it came to getting dressed. Elderly people like Su's mother wanted to wrap themselves in layer after layer of clothes, while Su Su, who had 2 different body temperatures, had already taken off her down jacket today and was only wearing a pair of fleece pants for pregnant women and a dark red pullover as she strolled outside. Her belly was slightly bulging, but because she was thin and had a small frame, the clothes she wore were slightly loose, so her belly was still not visible. With the narrow-legged maternity pants she wore, she really didn't look bloated at all. As she walked leisurely in the garden, the diamond-studded black owl on her red sweater flickered and was dazzling in the sun, looking very fashionable and beautiful. Early spring was gradually approaching. Su Su, wearing a pair of flat leather boots, stopped beside the bush that she had transplanted with great care. She basked in the sun and looked lazily. Just beside the bush, a small cluster of new bushes began to emerge. The tender green branches were covered with fine and dense thorns. At the end of the tree-lined path, a brand-new, spotless military jeep was approaching from afar. Su Su looked up and couldn't help but feel happy. Could it be that Yiyu was back? But immediately, she denied her guess. When Yiyu went out, there were 10 people with him. 10 people could not fit into a military jeep. He also had to bring Li Xiao's godmother with him. His godmother might bring a group of survivors. Look at the body of the car. It was clean without a trace of dirt. It didn't look like it had traveled through the entire Xiangqing. At the side of the wall, King Kong and the others stopped helping the young nurse to pick and choose and came over, looking curiously at the military jeep that had driven up in front of them and suddenly stopped. The rear window of the jeep was open. Li Ying, who was wearing delicate makeup and looked like a KMT female spy, was sitting in the back seat. She tilted her head and looked at Su Su standing in the middle of a group of Special Forces soldiers. She curled her red lips and smiled with an unclear intention. Su Su, long time no see. Long time no see. Su Su's eyes were like water, which seemed particularly bland compared to Li Ying's heavy appearance. She was also smiling, as if she and Li Ying had no unpleasant experiences in the past. She praised, "You're doing well. You've joined the army and become an officer." Li Ying just smiled and said nothing, but that smile was so proud, not humble at all. The accompanying soldier got off the car and opened the door of the rear compartment for her. She bent down and walked out gracefully. She glanced at King Kong and others who were looking at her curiously behind Su Su and turned to ask Su Su, "Where is Yu? Not here? I'm out on a mission." There was no need to hide anything. Su Su spoke the truth and guessed Li Ying's intention. She remained calm as she watched Li Ying take out a document from a soldier beside her and handed it to her. There was a proud smile on her carefully painted face. Li Ying said, "Oh, you didn't go with them. It just so happens that I have a document here that I want to deliver to Yu and the others. The same applies to you." Li Ying seemed to be showing off on purpose. Obviously, King Kong and others were standing behind Su Su. She wanted to give the documents to Yu and others, but she didn't give them directly to King Kong. Instead, she handed them to Su Su. It was obvious that she wanted to intimidate Su Su. It seemed to be saying, "Look, my current status is so important that I can look down upon you. I will hand the document to whoever you want. Just take it. You will regret it if you don't." Seeing Li Ying's proud attitude like a peacock, Su Su didn't mind. She took it and saw that it was a recall order for Yu and 18 others. It roughly meant to order Yu and 18 others to return to the team as soon as possible and report directly to Luin. There was a stamp of the army at the end of the document, which looked very formal. Just behind Su Su, King Kong stretched his neck to take a look. Su Su realized that this was after all a document concerning King Kong and his men, so he tilted his head slightly and handed the document in his hand to King Kong. His original intention was to let King Kong take a good look at it carefully, and then he would privately analyze the pros and cons of joining Lu Yin's troops for them. King Kong refused to take it. He and his other teammates all took a big step back, each with a complex and resentful expression on their face. "Li Ying, why is it that nothing good happens when I see you? It's the end of the world. Where did you steal such a document that looks exactly like the real thing?" Not sure what King Kong was thinking, he looked up and said something to Li Ying, then brushed off the dust on his camouflage pants, turned around and left as if he was looking very gloomy. The remaining 7 teammates also looked at Li Ying deeply, then turned around and left as if it had nothing to do with them. Such a reaction surprised Li Ying. She had thought that Yu and his group were all from the army, and they must have a sense of belonging to the army that ordinary people could hardly achieve. It was possible that Yi would still remember his friendship with Su Su and would persuade teammates like King Kong not to leave when they received the recall order. But she never expected that without Yi's presence, people like King Kong would be so disgusted with the recall order issued by Luin. Li Ying cast a questioning look at Su Su. Su Su shrugged and handed the recall order in her hand back to the man beside Li Ying with an innocent face. She was originally thinking that Yu and others would fall into Lu Yin's hands and be squeezed by Lu Yin until nothing was left. Seeing the reactions of King Kong and others, Su Su was relieved. At least King Kong and others were not interested in working for Lu Yin. Su Su knew that Yu, King Kong and others were deceived into the wall of the City Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Most of these people were orphans. Precisely because they were orphans, they had no worries, so the bosses didn't have to worry about using them. They wanted to sacrifice a small group of people like Yu to save the overall situation, and they didn't even think about letting Yu, King Kong, and others live. These people were already cold-hearted, and there was no way to warm them up. And the person who sent them the recall order happened to be Li Ying, who left a very bad impression on people. King Kong and others did not beat Li Ying back with a broom, which was already giving Li Ying face. Li Ying's image of being someone who only cares about the future and the overall situation and can nip any crisis in the bud has been deeply rooted in everyone's mind. And her joining the team has greatly reduced King Kong and others' first impression of Lu Yin's team. It is estimated that not only King Kong and others have a bad influence on Lu Yin, even non-superpower people like Brother Pai have little influence on Lu Yin. At this moment, King Kong and the others only felt that Lu Yin's team was the kind of people who could sacrifice them at will, and they had been abandoned and sacrificed once, and there was no way they would put themselves in such a miserable situation again. They were not stupid. So naturally I have no interest in returning to the team. But Li Ying had no way of knowing the reasons, and Su Su was too lazy to tell her, so Li Ying just thought that the leader of this group was Yu, and Yi was trapped in love and didn't want to leave Su, so King Kong and others under his command refused to accept the recall order. She smiled charmingly, not paying much attention to the accident today. She glanced at the backs of King Kong and the others as they left, and then looked at the hospital not far away, which had been almost tidied up, as well as Zhang Anquan and the others who were queuing outside the hospital waiting to go in. She asked Su with a little indifference and a bit of a bystander attitude, "Look, are you planning to open a hospital? The burden is getting bigger and bigger. Can you handle it in the future? I don't know, it's okay now." Su also looked back and happened to see Brother Pai and others moving an operating bed out of the truck. Seeing more and more medical supplies piled up in the yard, Su thought that Brother Pai and others would definitely have to renovate a villa next, otherwise it would be too messy with both a hospital and a baby. Su had never been in charge of these matters. She just took the lead in opening the hospital. The rest were all handled by doctors and nurses like Zhuo, as well as Brother Pai and others. At most, there were also some people like Zhang Anquan who helped to transport medical supplies. As for the materials to feed these doctors and nurses, it was not Su who provided these materials, but Brother Pai and others who were looking for materials to feed them. On the contrary, all of these people were now sending crystal cores and materials to Su in exchange for water and vegetables. Before the official opening of the business, these doctors and nurses were already earning crystal cores and giving her dividends. So could Su afford it? Very much so. Liang uttered a meaningful interjection, making it clear that she thought Su was just holding on. She felt from the bottom of her heart that these doctors, nurses, and babies were burdens, so she just regarded them as useless burdens. Although she also knew that to feed these doctors, nurses, and babies, Su didn't need to go out to find supplies herself, but if she encountered any dangerous situation in the future, she would have to divide her mind to take care of these burdens, such as when escaping at the end of the world. Thinking of this, Liang felt that Su was a peerless saint. "Yi went out. Why didn't you go with him?" "That's right, your body should be getting more and more uncomfortable, right?" Not wanting to pay any more attention to the busy doctors and nurses, Liang changed the subject and glanced at Su's belly meaningfully. Su's face turned cold, and she looked at Liang with caution and alertness. Liang smiled and said, "You are surprised why I know this? Su, if you don't want others to know, then you better not do it yourself. So, let's not talk too much today. When Yi comes back, you can ask him to report to me and bring his people with him. This way, maybe I can help you keep it a secret from him." Su was not surprised at all that Liang knew about her pregnancy, because she had never concealed the fact that she was pregnant. Even when Brother Pai asked her about it jokingly, Su did not deny it. Even someone like Brother Pai noticed some clues. Shouldn't Liang, who is so good at research, have confirmed that Su was pregnant long ago? But Su looked at the meaning of Li Ying's words today, and it seemed that she had clearly misunderstood something, and it seemed that Li Ying was threatening Su with a baby in her belly. What was she threatening? She threatened that if Su didn't let you go, Li Ying would tell you about Su's pregnancy? Li Ying doesn't think the baby in Su's belly is Yu's. Realizing this, Su smiled for some reason. She suddenly admired Li Ying's imagination. Naturally, she didn't mind whether Li Ying exposed this matter or not. Now Su's belly is getting bigger and bigger. She is forced by Su's father and mother to confess to you. Li Ying's behavior just fits the time, place, and people.
Oh.
Renha is still a little short of it. Yu doesn't know when he'll be able to come back. Tilting her head, Su was wondering whether Yu should be back for a while, and did not reply to Li Ying's words for a while. However, her contemplation turned into weighing and consideration in Li Ying's eyes. Li Ying smiled immediately, and her makeup was impeccable under the warm sunshine. She thought she had already got a hold of Su, and was very proud of herself for having a perfect handle on Su. So she was generous and stopped pursuing Su. With the good intention of letting Su relax, she turned to another topic and asked, "I haven't been back for a long time. Why don't you see Wang Jun? This time I also found him a good position in the team, responsible for building the base, which is exactly what he likes and is good at." "Wang Jun is gone," Su Su raised her eyebrows, and seeing the expression on Li Ying's face freeze, she continued, Wang Jun left on the same day you left. Really? But he didn't come to see me. He said he went to see his parents. At this moment, the perfect smile on Li Ying's face began to break apart bit by bit in the speechless silence. She stared at Su Su angrily, questioning her, You just let him go like this? Did he leave voluntarily, or did you just not like me and couldn't tolerate him, so you forced him to leave? You are funny, aren't you?
Shushu immediately countered.
Seeing the unfriendly look on Li Ying's face, she was too lazy to play nice. You left so abruptly. Have you ever thought about how Wang Jun feels? He came with you and always stood on the same side with you. You left, but you left Wang Jun behind. Where does he stand? Wang Jun can see it clearly. Even though my father tried his best to keep him, he is too embarrassed to stay here. Li Ying opened her red lips and uttered a word, but she found that she didn't know what to say next. She suddenly felt a little frustrated, as if a big tree that she thought she could see when she turned around suddenly disappeared, making her feel lost. Perhaps in everyone's life, there is always such a person who stands there forever like a landmark. No matter how far, how fast, or how fast she goes, as long as she looks back, she can see this landmark. Then her heart will be stable, and she can continue to move forward. Wang Jun is Li Ying's landmark. In the past, Li Ying didn't think this landmark was important. Anyway, as long as she turned around, Wang Jun would stand behind her without any regrets. If she wanted to find him, she didn't have to try hard. She could find him at a glance as long as she turned around. So to her, Wang Jun was just an ordinary decoration. Li Ying didn't care much about it, and there was no need to care about it. But today, when she turned around and was about to use Wang Jun, she found that this decoration was gone. He left, and he didn't go looking for her. This shocked Li Ying, and she couldn't accept it. She glared at Su Su, turned around, got in her jeep, summoned the soldiers accompanying her, and sped away. Su Su stood there, shrugged her shoulders, and continued walking as if nothing happened. Nearing noon, Xia Yaosher's special ability team had finished seeing the injured and were discussing whether or not to have a few banquets with King Kong and the others to liven up the atmosphere. However, Brother Pai and the others were still busy in and out, helping to tidy up another villa, planning to move the 9 babies into the other villa. Given the current situation, there just aren't enough staff to open a large hospital. The 8 medical staff here are all doctors and nurses from the gynecology and obstetrics departments. They don't have much experience in surgery or internal medicine, but when it comes to simply suturing a wound, Zhuo Shijia and Junjiu are both good at it. They often perform cesarean sections, and when they suturing the wounds on the bodies of the psychics, they just treat the skin of their wounds as the belly of the pregnant woman. No matter how many or how complicated the disease is, these few people cannot treat it. People with serious diseases these days have long been eliminated and turned into zombies. The remaining people have minor illnesses in their bodies, such as headaches and fevers, and they can bear it themselves. Therefore, the main business of the hospital opened by Su Su and others is still bandaging, suturing, and cleaning wounds. It has just opened now, and Xia Yaosher doesn't have many wounds that need suturing. Everyone is having fun and treating it as a delivery of some crystal cores and supplies to the hospital. The atmosphere is very relaxed. Su Su let them go. She took a leisurely walk, went home calmly to eat and sleep, and the days passed like flowing water. That day, Su Su finished her daily water release task. She wore a black sweater that didn't show her belly very much and a Korean-style tweed coat on the outside. She planned to walk around her area. She had just walked half a circle when she met a woman. This woman looked familiar from a distance. She was wearing a dark yellow tweed coat and a very stylish scarf on the outside. She walked over from a distance with an artistic temperament and greeted Su Su. Su Su? She tilted her head and took a closer look. It was none other than Xie Qingyan's mother, who had been rescued from somewhere by Xia Yaosher a few days ago. Su Su's face turned cold, and she pretended not to know her and continued on her way. If a person always stays in one place, doesn't go out to exercise, and just wanders around in this small piece of land every day, he will either meet this person or that person. Just a few days after Liang left, Su met Xie Qingyan's mother again. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Should she find some time to go out to exercise and see new things? In fact, it was hard for her to dislike Xie Qingyan's mother. After so many years, she still remembered Xie Qingyan's mother. It was because when Su was looking for Xiao Ai, she met Xie Qingyan's mother once, and she still remembered the attitude towards Xie's mother at that time. This story is quite long. Su couldn't remember which year it was in the apocalypse. Anyway, it was after she arrived in Chuncheon, and Xiao Ai was sold by Xie Qingyan and by Luoluo a few years ago. At that time, Xie Qingyan and Bai Luoluo had already been killed by her. Su chased one of Bai Luoluo's followers all the way from Chuncheon to the Jingqing base. At that time, there was no Qinglong base, and the Jingqing base only existed as the predecessor of the Qinglong base. At the Beijing base, Su killed several people, got some clues about Bai Xueli, and got into some trouble. He was planning to go east to look for Bai Xueli when Xie Qingyan's mother came to his door. In that era, a woman with a little bit of beauty but no ability to protect herself basically had to either find a man to rely on or a group of men to rely on. A woman like Xie's mother, who was a little older but still had charm and a good figure, was not as delicate as other girls. One can imagine her situation. At that time, Xie's mother had several purposes for coming. One was to ask Su about Xie Qingyan's life or death, and the other was to hope that Su could rescue her from the prison in the Beijing base. But Su had gone crazy in order to find Xiao Ai. When she saw Xie's mother's face, which had been through many worldly affairs but still looked like Xie Qingyan, Su was filled with anger. "You killed my daughter, and I killed you once, and then the grudges were clear, and we no longer owed each other anything?" Obviously, Su did not have such an open-minded mind. During the countless lonely and desolate days, every day she looked for Xiao Ai. She hated Xie Qingyan a little more. She hated him so much that she hated him all her life in the last life and would carry it into the next life. So it was only natural for Su to vent her anger on Xie's mother and hurt her severely. After Su told Xie's mother the truth, she thought she would fight with her, but Xie's mother just listened in a daze. After listening, she sat in Su's room for a long time, from noon to night, and then she laughed sadly and said to Su, "So that's how it is. You deserve to be hated." Having suffered all kinds of humiliation in the misery of the apocalypse, Xie's mother's heart had long been hardened into steel. Who doesn't have a few relatives who die in the apocalypse? What difference does it make if you kill me, he kills me, or you are killed by zombies? After all, the relative is dead and no longer in this world. So the last bit of thought in her heart was cut off, like a sigh of relief. She never asked Su to save her from the brothel again, but just said, "I guess you have a lot of enemies now. I know I won't avenge you, so you can take care of yourself." Then Xie's mother got up and left. She had been out for a long time and was afraid what kind of torture was waiting for her when she returned. When Xie's mother left, her back trembled, which made people feel extremely desolate. That was the last time Su saw Xie's mother. As a mother, she naturally understood in her heart how deep-rooted the hatred was for someone who hurt her children, so she killed Xie Qingyan. No matter what the reason was, it was natural for Xie's mother to hate her, but Su naturally understood the state of mind of hating her but being unable to do anything about her. Of course, later I heard from Mei Zi that Xie Yaoshi, the #1 master in the apocalypse, found Xie's mother and took her back to the Suzaka base. At that time, Xie's mother could have used all kinds of means to stir up hatred between Xie Yaoshi and Su, but Xie's mother didn't. I only heard that Xie's mother was almost at the end of her life at that time, and she passed away without a few days of good life. These events, of course, had nothing to do with Su. At that time, in order to find Xiao Ai, she traveled all over the country. She was crazy and her methods were sometimes cruel. She caused a lot of unnecessary trouble. When her enemies chased her, she fought back and hunted down her enemies. Those few years were like this, a bloody life. Maisie was well informed. Perhaps it was for her base points, or perhaps it was out of concern for her. She always mentioned Xia Yaoshi of the Suzaka base intentionally or unintentionally. She was also worried in her words that the #1 master of the apocalypse would lose his mind one day and join the army to hunt down Su Su. Su Su didn't care. She didn't care about anything except Xiao Ai. Then, until now, the things that happened in the previous life seemed like a sad and long dream. When Su Su saw Xia's mother again, she had nothing to say except putting on a cold face. Moreover, it was unknown how much hatred would arise between her and Xia's mother in the future because of Xia Qing. However, Su Su's gesture of turning around and walking away did not stop Mother Xia. Instead, she trotted after her. As she ran, her shawl fell askew, and she was still shouting, "Su Su, wait a moment. Annie wants to talk to you about Commander Lu Yin." Hearing the name Lu Yin coming from Xia's mother's mouth, Su Su was surprised and stopped unconsciously. At that moment, Xia's mother caught up with her. She looked at Su Su with a breath that was a little uneven, smiled, and said, "Qing Yan said he was afraid that you didn't want to see him, so he sent me here to be a lobbyist." Commander Lu Yin said he wanted to build a base in the suburbs of Xiangqing. This is a great event for everyone. Our Apple Villa area is already within the designated safe zone. Qing Yan wants you to join the army so that you can be separated from Yiyu temporarily. As long as you join the army, no matter how powerful Yiyu is, he will not dare to touch Commander Lu Yin's people. Su Su could no longer find any excuses in her mind. She sighed at Xia Qingyan's ability to deceive people. She could only look at Xia's mother, who was panting in front of her in amazement. Needless to say, Xia's mother was the second person to be deceived by Xia Qingyan to come to Su Su after Xia Yaoshi. The first time was because Xia Yaoshi wanted to kill Yiyu. Why was Xia's mother deceived here? To persuade Su Su to join Lu Yin's army? This was so funny. She was pregnant with a big belly. She had a good life to live, but she ran into the army to work hard for Lu Yin. Was she crazy, or did she have no desire to live? No, let Xia Qingyan give up this idea. What do you mean as long as I join the army, I can separate from Yiyu? I think Xia Qingyan wants to sell me out in exchange for fame, wealth, and fortune. Su Su spoke too bluntly and did not give any face to Xia's mother at all. This attitude made Xia's mother unable to react for a moment. Logically speaking, younger people should have the most basic courtesy when meeting their elders. This time, Xia Qingyan did not dare to come to Su Su in person, but mobilized his mother to persuade Su Su. He also thought that no matter what, Su Su should give Xia's mother a little face because Xia's mother had been nice to her in the past. Little did she know that Su Su would flatly refuse and speak so frankly without any disguise or embellishment. She saw through Xia Qingyan's true nature at a glance. She tried her best to find someone to persuade her to join Lu Yin's army. Someone must have promised Xia Qingyan some benefits. Mother Xia had an awkward look on her face, and she forced a smile at Su Su, saying, "Although Qingyan was entrusted by someone, you won't lose anything by joining the army." Base construction is a major trend in human development today. I heard that you are a water-based supernatural being, so you will definitely do a lot in the base in the future. This will also be a guarantee for your parents and relatives. Which girl doesn't want to live a stable life, right? Do you think that working under Lu Yin means you are a civil servant before the end of the world? In broad daylight, Su Su looked at Xia's mother with a gloating look. Xia Yaoshi has also been sold out by your Xia Qingyan. No need to say. You can guess it by thinking, ha 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 ha, I want to see, after Xia Yaoshi is tortured to death by Xia Qingyan, who will come to protect him. What do you mean? Xia's mother's face turned pale. She didn't quite understand what Su Su meant. What do you mean, can't you use your brain to analyze it? They have troops, guns, and bullets, so why do they need to recruit people with special abilities from all over the society? Naturally, they will pull people with special abilities to where there is danger. I don't care whether Xia Yaoshi of your Xia family dies or not, so don't drag me into it. Xia Qingyan has made a good calculation and sent you out as a lobbyist. How much face can you have? Go back as soon as possible to prepare for Xia Yaoshi's funeral and prepare for Xia Qingyan as well. The day after Xia Yaoshi dies, Su Su, will come to take Xie Qingyan's life. Su Su finished speaking in one breath, not caring about the pale and blue face of Xie's mother. She left without even glancing at Xie's mother. Someone like Xie's mother who didn't know a thing and still followed Xie Qingyan around would not live long. Without Xie Qingyan by her side, Xie's mother might be able to survive, but with a son like Xie Qingyan who acted like this every day, Xie's mother could only hope to live until next spring. Working in the base will give everyone the illusion at first that it is a job similar to that of a civil servant. Even those who are planning to build the base think so. But gradually, after the base is established, they will find out how stupid their original idea was. The salary given by the base civil servants is generous, but one has to be alive to get it. In fact, after the end of the world, it is the same to work in any base, but it is even worse to work under Lu Yin. He never takes the lives of people with special abilities seriously. He thinks that if he spends so much money to gather these people and does not use them to death, he would not be Lu Yin. Su Su's current body can't stand Lu Yin's exploitation, so she'd better hide aside, look for supplies, kill zombies, and live a life of comfort. The fame and fortune struggle and bloodshed outside are not suitable for her now. But when Su Su left, Xie's mother was left standing there alone, chewing over what Su Su said. She felt uncomfortable for some reason. She turned back in a hurry, intending to go to Xie Yaoshi's villa to find Xie Qingyan and ask him what this base that Lu Yin wanted to set up was all about. However, as soon as she entered the door, she heard Xie Yaoshi and Xie Qingyan arguing loudly. Xie Qingyan was very excited. He stood in the living room, holding a document in his hand, and asked Xie Yaoshi, who was sitting on the sofa, "Such generous conditions. As long as you are willing to bring your men to join the army, all of us will be properly settled. What else can you complain about? Brother, don't be so selfish. Do you know what Lu Yin is? What will we face after joining the army? What does he want us to do? You don't know anything, but you rashly agree to others. Xie Qingyan, what do you want to do? You agreed on my behalf. When did I ever give you such a right?" Compared to Xie Qingyan's excitement, Xie Yaoshi's expression was a little listless, a kind of boredom from being tired of dealing with things, and his voice was a little slow, as if he was going to end the conversation and throw Xie Qingyan out the door without paying attention. Xie Qingyan was still unaware of this and was still arguing with Xie Yaoshi. Joining the army has all the advantages and no disadvantages. The salary is guaranteed, your family has benefits, and there are a large number of troops to back you up. Why do you want to refuse? Brother, can't you consider our future? Why should I consider your future? Xie Yaoshi glanced at Xie Qingyan and said lightly, "After all, I don't know any of the survivors you brought with you. You want me to work for a stranger for their future. Is there something wrong with your brain, or is there something wrong with my brain?" These words have the same meaning as what Su Su said. It's the end of the world. People's hearts are fickle, and no one is willing to sacrifice themselves for anyone else. Xie Yaoshi didn't say anything in the past because Xie Qingyan hadn't touched his bottom line, but now, Xie Qingyan actually came out of nowhere and tried to dictate his life, which Xie Yaoshi could no longer tolerate. Xie Yaoshi's tone somewhat hinted at the intention of parting ways. Standing at the door, Xie's mother felt a little panicked. She wrapped her cloak and scarf around her, walked into the living room, frowned, and asked, "Brothers, what's the big deal that you have to quarrel like this?"
Mom.
Xie Qingyan turned around with a feeling of grievance, looked at his mother, and called out, and his mother raised her hand to stop Xie Qingyan from complaining. She looked at Xie Yaoshi with a friendly expression and said, "If your elder brother doesn't want to, then forget it, right? Aren't we living well now? Why do we have to pursue fame and fortune and work hard for the base? Mom, if everyone thinks like you and Big Brother, how can this base be established?" Hearing what his mother said, Xie Qingyan suddenly became anxious, fearing that Li Ying's promise would ruin his future, and hurriedly said, "We are living well now and everyone has something to eat, but that is just to survive. We can't even meet the most basic standards of food and clothing. Lu Yin promised us that as long as Big Brother is willing to serve in the army, all of us will have a job that is enough to support ourselves. Xia Yaoshi, who was sitting on the sofa beside him, was wearing a black sports suit with a thin iron gray down jacket on the outside. He couldn't help but sneer after hearing what Xie Qingyan said. He raised his eyes. He was too lazy to say something at first, but now he couldn't help but say it. If you are willing to mobilize those survivors you rescued with such good intentions to do some insignificant production and create some value of your own, why do you need to go out and find a meaningless job? Xia Yaoshi has seen very clearly in the past few days that people do what they do in different eras. Today's society is almost going back to a primitive society. Those high-tech jobs, such as studying viruses and manufacturing high-tech weapons, are really not suitable for ordinary people with average IQ. So the Su family did a very good job. Those who had no skills and could not afford to move around could either stay at home to farm, cook, and build houses, or go out to transport supplies. Those who had skills could either fight monsters and level up to act as protectors, or open hospitals to demonstrate their own value. The whole atmosphere is very good. From the elderly in their 50s and 60s to the 2-year-old children, everyone is busy every day, doing their own job and keeping busy. The group of survivors led by Xie Qingyan, perhaps some of them would follow Yi Yu's special forces to go out and search for some supplies, but seeing that the supplies on this street were almost sold out, they did not have the courage to run away, so they had no choice but to come back and eat all the supplies. Those who finally had the courage to run away were unwilling to bring back the supplies they had collected with great effort to share with others, so those who mustered up the courage to run away never came back. As for the rest of the people, which made up the vast majority of them, including Xie Qingyan, the most common thing they did every day was to lie on the bed, sit on a chair, or wander around out of boredom. The greatest and happiest thing in their lives was to watch Xie Yaoshi organize the superpowers to go out, and then watch Xie Yaoshi lead the superpowers back. This kind of grouping is very unhealthy. Some people are exhausted, some are bored, and those who have the courage to leave never want to come back. To be honest, if these people can work harder, Xie Yaoshi will be willing to support them. But now looking at the mental state and thoughts of these nearly 100 or 200 people, Xie Yaoshi will definitely not be able to bear it and leave one day. Brother, what do you mean by this? Xie Qingyan's expression became a little ugly after hearing what Xie Yaoshi said, and he immediately asked, "Even you, brother, are beginning to think that we are a burden? We don't have to be a burden to you, brother. As long as you are willing to join Commander Liu Yin's troops and serve the troops, each of us will be properly settled." Playing the lute to a cow. Facing Xie Qingyan's words, Xie Yaoshi felt a surge of irritation in his heart. He felt that Xie Qingyan never understood what he meant, or maybe he understood but pretended not to understand. In short, Xie Yaoshi no longer had the patience to talk to Xie Qingyan anymore. He stood up, walked directly to the entrance, changed his shoes, and walked out of his villa amid Xie's mother's earnest call. Seeing Xie Yaoshi's disheartened look, Xie's mother became anxious. She ran out of the door and called Xie Yaoshi a few more times, but Xie Yaoshi walked too fast and disappeared in a short while. Xie's mother had no choice but to turn around and walk into the living room. Seeing Xie Qingyan sitting on the sofa with a sad face, she sighed and said, "Qingyan, what on earth has possessed you today? Why do you have to quarrel with your elder brother? Your elder brother has to go out to find supplies for us every day, which is tiring enough. Can't you be more considerate of your elder brother?" When speaking, Xie's mother's voice was very soft. Although she was reprimanding Xie Qingyan, she was reluctant to use a harsh tone, which made Xie's mother's reprimand have no effect at all. Xie Qingyan only frowned and replied, "Big brother is becoming more and more stingy now. He has left all the supplies he found to the few psychics under his command. Those psychics are very difficult to talk to. If this continues, we will starve to death sooner or later." The first 2 times they went out to look for supplies, Xie Yaoshi did not say who the supplies were for. Xie Qingyan was naturally overjoyed, thinking that he could dispose of the supplies freely, so he called on a few diligent survivors under his command to divide up all the supplies in the dozen or so vehicles. Later, perhaps because Xie Yaoshi's subordinates had given him some complaints, Xie Yaoshi took the recovered supplies to the villa where those psychics lived and had several of Xie Yaoshi's subordinates with psychics take turns to look after them. Those psychics were all arrogant, and it was impossible for the survivors to get some supplies from them without paying something. For example, a female survivor who looks pretty would get a few pieces of bread by letting the supernatural beings guarding the supplies take advantage of her. This has become a very common phenomenon. Xie Qingyan doesn't know how this trend will develop in the future. He feels dirty, but he can't do anything about it. He tells these things to Xie Yaoshi, but Xie Yaoshi just listens and doesn't show any intention of punishing his subordinates. In fact, from Xie Yaoshi's perspective, these survivors have no ability and value. The key is that they are lazy and eat nothing. They don't go out to kill zombies and don't produce anything. There is really no need to keep them. His subordinates will touch the women who come to his door and give them a few pieces of bread to eat. How can he manage it? It's those women who take the initiative to come to his door and let his subordinates touch them a few times in exchange for a few bites of food. But Xie Qingyan didn't think so. He just thought that Xie Yaoshi's subordinates were monopolizing the supplies and forcing women to fall into depravity. Aren't those women pitiful? How long did they have to struggle with their thoughts and how hungry they were before they chose to sell themselves? Therefore, Xie Qingyan had no sense of security. He urgently hoped to find a backer again, a backer stronger than Xie Yaoshi. If the way to find this backer required Xie Yaoshi, Su Su, and Fei Fei to serve in the army, then they would go. Anyway, there was no harm in joining the army. Xie's mother, who was standing by, couldn't stand Xie Qingyan's attitude. After thinking about it, she decided to persuade Xie Qingyan. She sat beside him and whispered, "Mom went to see Su Su today. I heard that they not only brought 9 babies, but also doctors, nurses, and a 2-year-old child. Guess what those doctors and nurses were doing? And what was the 2-year-old child doing?"
Huh?
What can you do? It's the end of the world. What's the point of having doctors and nurses?
Just keep them.
In Xie Qingyan's mind, although Su Su is already a person with superpowers, she must be living the same life as him, dragging around a large group of people, and must be worrying about how to feed them every day. I heard that there are babies among them, so their life must be even more difficult. Xie's mother shook her head, smiled, and said to Xie Qingyan, "Those doctors and nurses are busy running a hospital. Your eldest brother's subordinates need crystal cores to receive treatment. The 2-year-old child is carrying a kettle and watering a bush under the wall. His mother is drying clothes and quilts nearby and is also helping with odd jobs in the hospital. Oh, my eldest brother's subordinates are delivering crystal cores over there?" As if he didn't understand what Xie's mother meant, Xie Qingyan looked a little indignant. What kind of madness and evil had happened to his elder brother Xie Yaoshi? The people on his side didn't take care of him, but he actually ran to Su Su's hospital to deliver the crystal core? Could it be that the doctors and nurses in that hospital were all engaged in the flesh trade? It was too dirty. Yes, look at those doctors and nurses who you once thought couldn't chop zombies or carry supplies, but now they are big earners of crystal cores. 2-year-old children have their own value. Qingyan, you should actually think about how to plan for the survivors under your command. Mother Xie didn't notice at all that Xie Qingyan had been distracted by her words. She tried hard to express her opinion and persuaded Xie Qingyan to walk out of the villa and out of the ivory tower she had built for himself. Now is not the same as before, and she didn't want Xie Qingyan to continue dreaming. When people gather together, you can't just feed them with supplies. That would be tiring, and they will become useless after being fed for a while. Those who don't want to be useless have already found better jobs. Surprisingly, those who stay with Xie Qingyan are all those who just want to get by and do nothing. Mother Xie felt that the atmosphere at Su Su's place was quite good. Even those gangsters who didn't look like good people were now helping the doctors and nurses with cleaning and chores. There were even a few gangsters who brought the babies out to bask in the sun, and their movements were so gentle, as if they had received professional training. And your elder brother and Su Su are both right. What on earth did Commander Lu Yin want them to do in the army? They don't know. From what Su Su said, it seems that Lu Yin is very good at exploiting people. Qingyan, don't let your elder brother take risks. We just stay at home, and our elder brother won't starve or freeze us. Seeing that Xie Qingyan seemed to have thought of something and remained silent, Xie's mother continued to persuade him. She had lived longer than Xie Qingyan, so she saw many things more thoroughly than Xie Qingyan. She understood Xie Qingyan's ambition and knew that Xie Qingyan was unwilling to be just an ordinary person. But the facts have proved that Xie Qingyan is just an ordinary person. This is a fact, and there is no way to change it. Since he is just an ordinary person, he should not do things beyond his ability. He obviously cannot afford to support that large group of survivors, but he insists on taking on so much responsibility and even asks Xie Yaoshi to do the same as him. These words were too straightforward. Mother Xie didn't want to hurt Xie Qingyan's feelings by saying them. She tried to be as tactful as possible, hoping that Xie Qingyan could understand that things were different now. Now they were both living with the help of Xie Yaoshi. She must not offend Xie Yaoshi too much. If Xie Yaoshi gave up and ignored them, what would happen if Su Su really came to kill Xie Qingyan in the future? Humph, the two of them are in collusion. Listening to what Xie's mother said, Xie Qingyan snorted coldly. He didn't expect that Xie Yaoshi and Su Su had become so close and had even spoken the same language. No wonder Xie Yaoshi always defended Su Su and even sent his subordinates to send crystal cores to Su Su. Why didn't Xie Yaoshi send the crystal cores to the survivors on his side? Xie Qingyan was as depressed as if he had discovered an adulterer. He couldn't listen to a word from Xie's mother. No matter what Xie's mother said, Xie Qingyan would push all the problems and contradictions onto Su Su. Su Su was getting even more despicable now. Not only did she hook up with a large group of Special Forces soldiers, she also reached out to Xie Yaoshi. Which? Mom, why are you like my big brother, with no ambition at all? I won't give up. I will definitely let my big brother join the army. Mom, as long as you are here, no matter what I do, my big brother will not be angry with us, don't worry. After casually comforting Xie's mother, Xie Qingyan was too irritable to listen anymore, so he got up and left, as if he felt that no one in the world understood him. In his heart, he had begun to resent Xie's mother's words. Now he was not hungry or cold, but this kind of life really made him feel depressed. Su Su looked down on him and ran away with the beastie. Xie Yaoshi also looked down on him. He was eager to make some achievements to let everyone see that he was still the respected squad leader before the end of the world, and still the favored child of destiny that everyone revolved around. Su Su didn't want to join the army, which was within Xie Qingyan's expectations. It didn't matter. Even if Su Su didn't want to join the army, he still had Fei Fei. Fei Fei's wood-based abilities were very powerful now, and Fei Fei loved him. Regardless of whether Fei Fei joined the army or not, she was always under Xie Qingyan's control. And as long as Xie's mother was around, Xie Qingyan guessed that Xie Yaoshi would never be able to bear to do this, because the Xie family had raised Xie Yaoshi. Getting Xie Yaoshi to join the army was not urgent, and could be done through persuasion slowly. Xie Qingyan's only plan now was to capture Fei Fei and persuade her to join the army. Thinking this in his heart, he hurried out to find Fei Fei, leaving Xie's mother sitting alone in the living room, supporting her forehead with one hand, facing Xie Qingyan's stubbornness, her heart full of worry. She naturally knew what kind of person her son was. Xie Qingyan had lived in the spotlight since he was a child, and was the one that everyone vied to flatter. Suddenly, he became an ordinary survivor without any special powers and no strengths. It was certain that Xie Qingyan's heart was unbalanced. Now, Xie's mother just hopes that Xie Qingyan will not continue to develop like this. If he continues like this, who knows what kind of suicidal path he will take in the future. As a mother, Xie's mother is very worried about her son's future. Outside, Xie Qingyan, who was only thinking about how to make a name for himself, had just walked out of the villa gate when Fei Fei, whom he was going to find, hurriedly walked into the yard. Behind Fei Fei were several survivors of the night patrol. Their faces did not look good, and Fei Fei was even paler. Due to excessive consumption of supernatural powers for many consecutive days, Fei Fei's body had obviously been unable to bear it, and the cheekbones on both cheeks were clearly visible. Qingyan, we're just about to go look for you. The skinny Fei Fei called out Xie Qingyan. She now felt that her relationship with Xie Qingyan was growing by leaps and bounds. so she changed the way she addressed Xie Qingyan from class monitor to the relatively more intimate Qingyan. She brought a few survivors on night patrol and stopped by the Iron Gate. She reported to Xie Qingyan, who came forward. 2 more survivors disappeared last night. Again? Xie Qingyan seemed to find the word Feifei said quite strange. After thinking for a while, he remembered that Feifei had mentioned to him several times at some point that the survivors of the night patrol had disappeared one after another. However, he had a lot of things to do recently, and he was always busy. So Xie Qingyan had never taken the matters concerning these survivors to heart and just left all the arrangements for the survivors to Li Anxin and Feifei. However, Xie Qingyan needed help from Feifei at this moment. It could be said that Xie Qingyan's future depended entirely on Feifei. Therefore, even if Xie Qingyan no longer cared about the conditions of these survivors, he had to pretend to frown and then asked, "Do you feel that you have suffered enough with us and are seeking better development?"
I don't know about that.
Feifei shook her head, looking a little worried. She turned around and pointed at the survivors following behind her and said, "Wang Fan and the others were on night patrol with the missing brothers Zhong and Shou yesterday." Wang Fan said Zhong and Shou behaved normally the whole time yesterday. They also said they played cards together this morning and didn't mention leaving. No one wants to leave, so there will be a big farewell. Xie Qingyan didn't think so. He didn't care at all about who left and who stayed among the survivors. Now, he only had his own future in his mind, so he didn't seem as nervous as Feifei, Wang Fan, and others. He didn't even think about checking whether the survivors had left or disappeared inexplicably. He didn't take it seriously at all, and even comforted Feifei, Wang Fan, and others. "Okay, don't be too nervous. Let those who want to leave go. They think they will have a better future after leaving, so we shouldn't stop them. I have found a new way for you recently. As long as I develop this line well, everyone will have a job like a civil servant in the future, and we won't have to worry about food and drink." "Really? Did those soldiers who came a few days ago promise to properly accommodate us? This is great. Before the apocalypse, I took the civil service exams several times and failed every time. I didn't expect that after the apocalypse, this opportunity would come to me." "Yes, that's great, Chief. Please urge them to arrange it for us as soon as possible." The survivors, who were talking at once, had completely forgotten the tension they had felt before. The tension and pressure caused by the continuous disappearance of survivors instantly disappeared like dark clouds overhead, and the sky cleared up soon. They were excited and expectant in their hearts, as if they felt that the darkness had passed and light was in the not-too-distant future. Xie Qingyan was smiling, and turned to look at Feifei, who was still worried beside him. He patted her shoulder, tilted his head, and whispered to her, "Feifei, come here. I have something very important to tell you." Feifei didn't understand, and followed Xie Qingyan to leave, while the survivors behind were still discussing enthusiastically, and quickly told the good news to everyone in the Apple Villa district, so those people were eagerly waiting for themselves to become civil servants. In just a few days, the mental outlook of the entire suburbs of Xiangqing has undergone earth-shaking changes. The streets are full of patrolling soldiers, and military jeeps come and go solemnly. Because of the strong suppression of the army, there is no zombie on the streets designated as the safe zone. The survivors, who used to be afraid to go out, now dare to go out for a walk, and the police station outside the Apple Villa area has become a new command center. Outside the police station, there are several tables, and the survivors are queuing in front of the tables, waiting for the army to assign them jobs. Next to the table, there is a propaganda column which was specially used to promote various party and government slogans before the end of the world. Now there is a red notice posted on it, stating that this area has become a safe zone under the wise command of Commander Lu Yin, and that it will recruit unlimited numbers of people with special abilities and ordinary people to contribute to the construction of the base. Various preferential policies and benefits were then posted behind it. After a person with special abilities joins the army will provide them with food and drink, as well as 3,000 ordinary crystal cores every month. In addition, each person with special abilities will be allocated a suite in the safe zone and can accommodate their family and friends in the suite at will. Their families will also be protected by the army, which is a bit like first-class citizens in terms of grade. Moreover, these family members do not need to hand in supplies and crystal cores when entering and leaving the safe zone, and can also enjoy priority medical services. After joining the army, those with stronger abilities will go to the Ability Vanguard team, while those with weaker abilities will go to the Ability Logistics team. In addition to enjoying the above treatment, those in the Ability Vanguard team also have additional rights such as the right to autonomous marriage, priority in resource use, and immunity. Perhaps because the two superpower teams in the Apple Villa district were too eye-catching, flyers with these preferential policies were sent to the Apple Villa district without stopping. Su occasionally received one, and casually took a look at the additional rights that the Superpower Vanguard team had. What about the right to autonomous marriage, the right to priority use of resources, and the right of immunity? In addition, the right of immunity means that if the superpowers of the Superpower Vanguard team kill someone, they can be exempted from any legal criminal responsibility. This treatment is quite generous, and it is no wonder that Lu Yin can attract so many psychics to work for him. As for the 3 preferential policies for the Psychic Vanguard team, they actually exist in every base. However, since they have already developed into bases, these preferential policies must be slightly modified and packaged in language so that people will not see them so straightforwardly. In order to prevent those psychics who work for the base from taking advantage of these privileges to disrupt the base's security, the base has also introduced many reward and punishment measures to restrict the psychics of the Psychic Vanguard team from undermining social stability. The Xiangqing base presided over by Lu Yin is just a very small base. Many of the preferential policies for people with special abilities are not summarized in a comprehensive manner. They may just be written down as they think of them. However, with only these 3 points, and without any reward or punishment measures to restrain these people with special abilities, chaos is doomed to occur in the future. Let's talk about the other type of people being recruited. In addition to recruiting people with special abilities, ordinary people can of course find jobs from him. Ordinary people who participate in pulling wire fences will have 3 meals and 2 snacks provided, but they will not get any crystal cores. But for ordinary people, it is enough to have enough food to eat. The end of the world has come, and the buying and selling system has not been fully established. It is useless for ordinary people to have crystal cores that they cannot eat or drink. Moreover, for ordinary people who have been hungry for a long time, having 3 full meals and 2 snacks is considered a generous reward. Just building the safe zone would still require hard labor, which was different from the general civil servant positions that Xie Qingyan mentioned. So the survivors under Xie Qingyan did not move, but just waited eagerly for Xie Qingyan to find them jobs similar to those of civil servants that were easy and well paid. As for the people on Su's side, whether they were psychics or ordinary people, everyone had things to do and had no worries about food and drink, so they ignored the flyers that were being distributed everywhere. These notices had been hung at the entrance of the police station for a few days and were getting more and more popular. Lu Yin seemed to feel that it was not enough, so in addition to distributing flyers, early one morning, a loudspeaker was hung on the military jeeps passing by on the street, broadcasting these recruitment notices over and over again, as well as the conditions and treatment for ordinary people and those with special powers, making it as lively and festive as Chinese New Year. Su didn't sleep well early in the morning. She was woken up by the loudspeaker outside. She went to the bathroom for a while and went downstairs with a pale face. She saw her parents with dark circles under their eyes, busy cooking in the kitchen.
Su felt angry.
She took a bowl of soup from the pot and drank it, then touched her already visible belly, went back upstairs and changed into a loose white long sweater, put on maternity pants and flat boots, and a dark jacket on the outside, put on a baseball cap, and went out. When she walked outside the wall, she saw that everyone looked like they were sleep-deprived. Brother Pai's subordinates were holding 9 crying babies and walking around outside to comfort them, while Ruerue was yawning pitifully and brushing his teeth while sitting on a small stool. Hurry up, speed up. Su was still confused and hadn't woken up from her doze when she heard King Kong hurriedly gathering his men. She was startled and looked back to see that King Kong's group of men were running out of the villa at the speed of an emergency assembly. Everyone looked like they were ready for a march, fully armed, with weapons in their hands, gun cases hanging on their bodies, and large marching backpacks on their backs. They lined up in a row, and King Kong was shouting slogans and counting. As he counted the heads with the sonorous and powerful voices, 1, 2, 3, 4, Sue's heart gradually became heavy. With her slightly bulging belly, she strode forward, grabbed King Kong, who was about to jump out of the car, and asked, "What happened?" "Emergency signal. Yi Pa Pai is in trouble in the east." King Kong pointed at the sky, where there was a pink smoke that had not yet completely dissipated. The direction from which the smoke rose was the east. Sue looked up, and her heart began to beat wildly. Without thinking too much, she jumped into King Kong's passenger seat. Zhuo Shijia, who followed her out, saw that Sue had gotten into the car with a bulging belly. She hurriedly ran a few steps, opened King Kong's trunk door, and squeezed in.
You.
The fully armed King Kong stood there for 2 seconds, then he reacted and got in the car, sat in the driver's seat, stepped on the accelerator, and drove away with the 2 cars behind him. Sue's father and mother chased after him, but they only caught a trace of car exhaust, which made Sue's mother scream in anger. Sue, don't be anxious when things happen. Always take care of the baby in your belly." Before they could react, everyone who was left there was stunned. What did this mean? 3 cars, carrying 10 Special Forces soldiers, drove away. Sue sat in the passenger seat of the first car, fastened her seatbelt, and was careful not to let the seatbelt squeeze her stomach. Then she turned around and looked at King Kong's car. For this emergency dispatch, King Kong and his 8 men drove a total of 3 off-road vehicles, so the space inside the vehicles was still spacious, just enough for her and Zhuo Shijia. The rumbling supersonic speakers on the street were still playing one after another, making Sue feel very uncomfortable. In addition, she didn't know about Yiyu's situation, so she couldn't control her anger. She just thought that when she couldn't bear it anymore, she would destroy the torturous loudspeaker. The safe zone is not large, and the base has not been built yet. Some important road fortresses are still guarded by the troops. As King Kong rushed eastward, the sound of the loudspeaker gradually became smaller, replaced by the sparse and chaotic flow of people along the way and the sound of gunfire not far away. The more frequent the gunfire was, the more King Kong drove towards that place. Soon, they saw a heavily guarded obstacle. There were piles of soldiers with guns guarding behind the obstacle. Outside the obstacle was a group of zombies that were staggering towards them. On both sides of the obstacle were 2 buildings with snipers stationed on the windows of the buildings. Yiyu, who had sent out an emergency signal, stood in the center of the group of soldiers. He and his brothers huddled together. Each of them had a gun pointed between his brows, and Yiyu was no exception. Sue was sitting in King Kong's car. Even from a distance, she could see Yiyu's livid face. There seemed to be sparks in his eyes. Although there was a gun pressed against his brow, his face seemed fearless. He was covered in blood and looked violent, with his hands on his waist. He took a step forward, and the soldier with the gun pointed at his forehead took a step back. Yiyu glanced at the 3 cars rushing over and said with a rather arrogant smile, "What's the matter? Are you scared? You have the guts to arrest my people, but you don't have the guts to fight me? You pointed a gun at my head, and I didn't even blink. What are you afraid of?" As King Kong drove forward, Sue tilted her head and saw that the special forces were surrounding an old lady in a black cotton padded jacket. The old lady's eyesight seemed to be not very good. She hid behind Li Xia tremblingly, giving people a feeling of being haggard. Her 10 fingers kept twisting a string of Buddhist beads in her hand. At this time, King Kong had already stopped the car. He jumped out of the car and shook all the joints of his body. Facing such a big scene, he and the brothers behind him walked forward calmly and went straight towards Yiyu. It seemed that they had known for a long time that King Kong and his 8 men were in the same group as Yiyu's 10 men. As soon as King Kong and his men got out of the car, guns were aimed at their heads. Sue thought for a moment, sat in the passenger seat, turned around and said to Zhuo Shijia, "I'll go out and take a look. Don't get out of the car. There will be a fight soon. You drive a car back first." Analyzing the situation alone, It was difficult for Su Su to judge who was right and who was wrong between Yi Yu and the group of soldiers who pointed guns at him. But by looking at the blind old lady behind Li Xia and the 10 trucks full of supplies parked outside the barrier, it was basically clear that Yi Yu and his 10 men had returned with Li Xia's godmother, but were blocked by Lu Yin's soldiers with guns in this place. According to Yi Yu's arrogant personality, he might be asked to hand over some supplies when he passed the obstacles. As a result, Yi Yu refused and was surrounded with guns. In fact, any force that wanted to set up a base and the survivors who wanted to enter the safe zone had to hand over some supplies. After all, Yi was experiencing the apocalyptic changes for the first time in his life, so it was normal for him not to understand. Already come to this, and there was no way Su Su could ruin Yi Yu's plan in front of everyone. She could only follow King Kong and the others, slowly approaching Yi Yu, wondering how she would clean up the situation in the future if a fight broke out. Okay, take care of yourself and put the baby first in everything. Looking at the tense atmosphere outside the window, Zhuo Shijia knew her own weight very well. She didn't get out of the car, not because she was not brave enough, but because in this situation, she would be a burden if she got out of the car. So Zhuo Shijia was straightforward and just told Su Su that no matter what happened, she should run away and not take risks. If Su Su didn't take risks, it would be the greatest responsibility for the baby in her belly. Su Su nodded, opened the car door, and followed King Kong and others. King Kong led his men to the periphery of the soldiers and stopped. Some soldiers in front were still pointing their guns at Yi Yu and his 10 men, while some soldiers had turned around and formed a confrontation with King Kong. King Kong didn't care. He just stretched his neck and asked Yi Yu loudly through a group of soldiers, "What's going on? Do you want to fight or not? Yi Baopi, you rascal, you called me here just to watch you being pointed at with a gun. Are you a coward? Why not?" Yi Yu stretched out his hand and slapped the soldier in front of him in the face. The soldier held the gun in one hand, still pressing it against Yi Yu's brow, and the other hand was trembling slightly. He gritted his teeth and endured it, without fighting back or firing a gun. So Yi Yu spread his hands, turned his head and looked at King Kong innocently. "Look, I want to fight, but they don't want to fight with me. You grandson." The situation was a bit weird. King Kong spat, raised his foot and kicked a soldier in front of him who was pointing a gun at him. The soldier fell back, stood up, raised the gun to King Kong's forehead, but did not shoot. "I've seen it. Today I've really seen it." King Kong was quite surprised. He walked forward regardless of anything, holding the gun between his eyebrows. As he walked, the soldiers in front of him retreated. The brothers behind King Kong followed him. Seeing this, Su Su frowned and followed him. When King Kong's group met up with Yi Yu's group, before she could react, Yi Yu stretched out his hand and grabbed her from behind. Yi Yu's face was angry. He looked back at Su Su, and sparks flashed in his eyes. He raised his finger and flicked the gun on his forehead. He said to Su Su in a bad tone, "Are you bored staying at home and come out to find excitement for me?" Su Su rolled her eyes at Yi Yu, glanced at the few bloody cuts on his face, stretched out her slender white fingers, grabbed the gun pressed against Yi Yu's forehead, and asked the soldier in front of her with a look of impatience, "Do you want people or supplies? If people stay, all the supplies can be brought in. If people don't stay, half of the supplies will have to be handed over." The one who said this was Li Xia. He stood beside Yi Yu, protecting the blind godmother behind him. The old godmother had been keeping her head down, trembling as she counted the Buddhist beads in her hand. Upon hearing this, she raised her head slightly and muttered, "Amit Ba." Su Su smiled immediately and said, "Oh," and he had a general understanding of the current situation in his heart. Lu Yin had previously sent a recall order to King Kong and others through Liang, in which the intention was obvious to recruit Yi Yu and 18 others under his command, but King Kong refused. Now that Yi Yu had returned from looking for Lao Ganma, it happened to give Lu Yin the opportunity to forcibly detain people. They said that if people stayed, all the supplies could be taken back, but if people didn't stay, half of the supplies had to be handed over. According to the rules of ordinary bases, 1/3 of the supplies had to be handed over, which was already a lot. Others fought hard, and Yi Yu also fought hard. Why should Yi Yu and his people hand over half of the supplies they found? So it was no wonder that Yi Yu was stuck here. They were blocking Yi Yu, but they didn't dare to take action seriously, because everyone knew that if they really fought with Yi Yu and his 18 people, they would never be Yi Yu and his opponents, and perhaps they would never be able to win Yi Yu without any losses. Su glanced around and found that among this group of soldiers, there was not a single one with superpowers who had energy fluctuations, while all 18 of Yi Yu's men had superpowers, so there was basically no suspense about who would win or lose. On the contrary, there was a powerful supernatural power fluctuation behind a window in the building opposite. Su frowned and looked up unconsciously. She happened to see an eagle circling in the sky. That was Lu Yin's eagle. It was said that it had a telepathic connection with Lu Yin. When Lu Yin awakened his supernatural powers, he lost an eye, and that eagle was Lu Yin's eye. Whatever the eagle could see, Lu Yin could also see. Su lowered her head, quickly analyzed the situation in her mind, then raised her eyes and smiled at Yi Yu's back, saying, "It's okay. They don't dare to fight you to the death yet. They are people who want to do big things. Now that the big situation has not started yet, how can they lose their lives here? Tell your brothers to go out and drive the car back." In front, Yi Yu, who was standing in the way of Su, turned around and grinned at Su with endless arrogance and viciousness, cursing, "You didn't dare to do it. Why didn't you say so earlier? I even mobilized a large number of brothers to come over, thinking that we could have a good fight. Li Xia, pick 10 people, take your mother and Su with you, and go out and drive the car back." "Yes." Li Xia moved immediately, turned around and pointed at the 10 injured heads on his side, and said to Su, "Come with us to drive."
No.
Su shook her head and refused decisively. "There are a lot of zombies outside.
I'm scared.
I want to watch the fun here." "Burton." Yi Yu in front turned around and glared at Su. Su glared back at Yi Yu, not wanting to be outdone. She also reached out and tightly grabbed the backpack on Yi Yu's back. Seeing how frail and pitiful she was, like a daughter in a greenhouse, who had never seen the world, yet was determined to see the excitement to the end, and acted as if no one could pull her away, Yi Yu smiled unconsciously, then immediately frowned and threatened. "You'll be shot to pieces in a moment. I won't bother to care about you. Take care of yourself. Even if you've been shot to pieces, I can't do anything about you." Su stretched out her hand and pushed Yi Yu's head straight. There were several guns on his forehead, but he kept turning his head to talk to her. Wasn't he evil? Li Xia shook her head, feeling helpless towards the two men. With a cold face, she led 10 people, along with Lao Gan Ma, and moved out of the obstacle despite the dark bullet holes. King Kong and the others followed behind, seemingly slowly, but they actually made up for the gap left by Li Xia and the others quickly. The 8 people, together with Yi Yu, surrounded Su in the center, and in front of them, there was still a circle of soldiers with guns pointed at their foreheads. In front of the dark gun hole, King Kong took out a cigarette and fumbled in his pockets for a while. He didn't find a lighter, so he put the cigarette into the muzzle of the gun between his eyebrows and whispered to Yi Yu beside him, "Skin it, light a fire." Yi Yu tilted his head to glance at the cigarette that King Kong placed on the muzzle of the gun. The cigarette immediately ignited without fire. Red sparks appeared on the white smoke, and white smoke rose up. Under this leisurely attitude, there is a mysterious and tense atmosphere. Although Su is sure that Lu Yin will not hurt her vitality at this critical moment, she is also a little nervous in her heart. With so many guns, if a fight really breaks out, her side will definitely win, but what will happen after winning? Lu Yin has surrounded the entire safe zone. There must be more soldiers under his command than here. There will be a steady stream of soldiers from afar to replenish them. It is unknown how long it will take to fight. Moreover, if they kill other people's soldiers this time, will they still be able to live and walk in the Xiangqing base in the future? This base has not been built yet, and they have already made enemies with the future leader of the base. What should they do? But judging by what Lu Yin did today, it seemed that he had already started a conflict with Yi Yu's team. Given Yi Yu's habits, there was naturally no possibility for him to be Lu Yin's subordinate anymore. If Lu Yin annoyed Yu again, he might even rebel against the entire base. She was a pregnant woman. She had no time to lead a peaceful life, but she was so confused today that she followed Yu into this mess without thinking. Was she going to wander around with Yu in the future, or what? On the other hand, Lu Yin was also stupid. He didn't understand the temper of Yu's team at all. He wanted to recruit them right away. He first sent Liang to take the soft approach, but the soft approach was to send a recall order directly. Later, he planned to detain Yu to take the hard approach, saying that if he didn't keep the people, he would keep half of the supplies. It was obvious that he was forcing Yu not to leave. People like Yu are soft-hearted and will not respond to tough measures. The more people detain him, the more Yu will rebel. It is better to show weakness. Maybe when Yu is in a good mood, he will help Lu Yin fight a few battles. Su scolded herself for meddling in other people's business, and then scolded Lu Yin for being stupid. After scolding each other, she looked at Yu's back and thought about how Yu and others came from the army. What kind of mood would they have now to face these soldiers pointing guns at them? She was a little confused and couldn't find the right way to keep her family safe and happy. In a tense and depressed mood, Li Xia had already led his brothers and Lao Ganma out of the obstacle. The zombies outside the obstacle had been almost cleared out by them. But now, due to the struggle among the people, no one was cleaning up the zombies wandering outside. Li Xia spent some time and led his brothers to start cleaning up the zombies outside again. Su, Yu, and 8 other people were still surrounded in the middle. In the silent confrontation, Yu turned around, stretched out his dirty and bloody black hand, grabbed Su's white and tender little hand that was holding his backpack, and squeezed it soothingly, as if telling Su to wait a little longer. Su's heart then stabilized, and he lowered his head and smiled unconsciously, then squeezed Yu's hand hard and waited patiently with him. Looking at it in a positive way, perhaps this is a game without the smoke of gunpowder. What is being compared is who has better patience, perseverance, and stronger mental quality. Whoever gives in is showing weakness, and the superiority of the two forces will be immediately apparent. If Yu can't hold on any longer, he won't have to raise his head in front of Lu Yin in the future and can just listen to Lu Yin's orders. If Lu Yin can't hold on any longer, Yu can walk sideways in the base in the future. Time passed by minute, and in silence, Li Xia and his 10 men had already killed the zombies outside. 10 people and 10 cars, Lao Ganma and Li Xia's car, slowly drove into the obstacle. In full view of everyone, King Kong and others personally opened a door in the barbed wire, let Li Xia's 10 cars in, and drove away. The eagle in the sky screamed in anger, but did not make any extreme reaction. It pointed its guns at Yu and his group of soldiers, and just kept pointing their guns until the 10 trucks full of supplies driven by Li Xia entered the safe zone and drove away. Okay, let's go too. Yu stared at the armed soldier in front of him, holding Su's hand tightly, and retreated step by step to the safe zone. King Kong and the other 7 people also slowly moved forward and backward, gradually forming a moving offensive and defensive circle. King Kong still had a cigarette in his mouth, and the ash fell on the barrel of a gun pointed at his heart. He smiled mischievously, raised his 2 hands to make a surrender gesture, and while retreating, he turned back and shouted, "Dr. Zhua, drive the car up." Zhua Shijia in the car was sweating all over. This scene made her, an outsider, extremely nervous. Suddenly, she heard King Kong, who was surrounded, shouting like this. Zhua Shijia immediately trembled and hurriedly climbed from the back compartment to the driver's seat, started the car, stepped on the accelerator, and rushed up. The car rushed forward, but didn't hit anyone. Next to the outermost layer of soldiers, Zhua Shijia stopped the car, turned a corner, and opened the door. Yu, who was at the edge, grabbed Su's hand and kicked forward, knocking over a soldier who was blocking the way. He then quickly took Su's steps, opened the door of the trunk, and threw Su in. "Get in the car." Yu turned around and blocked the door to prevent any gun from aiming at Su. He stood by the car door with 2 of fire in his hands, but did not throw them out. He just held them in his hands as a deterrent. King Kong then turned around and ran away with the remaining 7 brothers. As soon as King Kong ran to the side of the car driven by Zhuo Shijia, opened the door, and sat in the passenger seat, the remaining 6 brothers also ran away quickly. Before the soldiers with guns caught up with them, they ran into the remaining 2 cars and drove away. Go, Dr. Zhuo, let's have fun. In the passenger seat, King Kong was in a state of tension. This moment was actually the most tense moment for both forces. Whether a fight could break out depended on this last moment. If Lu Yin really wanted to keep his life at all costs, the soldiers with guns would definitely open fire. Su Su was also very nervous. She stood up from the leather chair in the back of the car, hugged Yi Yu's waist, and looked over Yi Yu's shoulders at the soldiers outside chasing after her. Zhuo Shijia stepped on the accelerator, and then she hugged Yi Yu's waist and dragged him in. Zhuo Shijia did a tailspin and drove away. Lu Yin will never give up. This is the only thought in Su Su's mind at the moment. Although Yi Yu did not fight with Lu Yin's men this time, he has definitely given Lu Yin a big warning. It's just that Lu Yin has to build a base now, and can't spare any extra energy to deal with Yi Yu. Once the base is built, Yi Yu's leisurely days will probably be over. Yi Yu, who was in the back of the car, managed to steady himself amid Zhuo Shijia's chaotic driving skills. He also pulled up Su Su, who was lying on the seat, and raised his head to ask King Kong in the passenger seat, "What's the other party's plan?" "I heard that a commander named Lu Yin appeared out of nowhere with an army and has been recruiting people with special abilities everywhere these days." "Oh, and he also sent Li Ying to give us a recall order, asking us to report to him." "You went?" "Bah, how can that be possible? Didn't we agree that we won't return to the army in this lifetime? I'm living a quiet life and am planning to keep my life alive. I'm thinking about getting married and having a son." When he said this, King Kong in the passenger seat secretly glanced at Zhuo Shijia. Zhuo Shijia was driving and had not paid attention to King Kong. But when he heard King Kong say, "I'm thinking about marrying a wife and having a son," he turned his head to glance at King Kong. The two of them happened to look at each other, and King Kong's face turned hot. He turned his head away shyly and looked out the window as if nothing had happened. Yi Yu, who was sitting in the back seat, tilted his head and thought seriously. He couldn't remember where he had heard of Lu Yin's name, so he told King Kong, "Go back and ask the scholar and the fortune teller. Those 2 guys like to ask questions. I always feel that Lu Yin's name is familiar." After explaining, Yi Yu put away his expressionless face, turned his head to look at Su Su, who was sitting quietly beside him, and with his big hands, he embraced Su Su's thin little body and held it in his arms, grinning and saying, "Sister, what are you thinking about?"
"Fine."
Su Su raised her hand and pressed down the baseball cap on her head. She had no intention of disrupting Lu Yin's plan to build a base. It was true that building a base was a general trend in human development, and it was also greatly beneficial to the survival of the entire human race. It was just that Lu Yin's ambition was too big, and he did not know how to proceed step by step to conserve his strength. This led to the decline of the Xiangqing base after just 2 or 3 years, with no superpowers available. Therefore, it would take 2 to 3 years for the Xiangqing base to collapse. Su Su's original plan was to give birth to Xiao AI safely in the Xiangqing base, make adequate preparations, and then take her parents and Xiao AI north. However, now Yi Yu and his group, as well as Su Su, may have already had a grudge with Lu Yin, so her plan would have to change. Yi Yu, who was holding her, did not think so much. Amid Zhuo Shijia's terrible driving skills, Yi Yu put his feet on the ground of the car, steadied his body, and sat steadily, holding Su Su. The expression on his face was no longer as arrogant as before, but turned into a gangster look. He looked down at Su Su and felt that this girl had become more and more beautiful after not seeing her for a long time. He wanted to bite her. Yi Yu felt itchy in his heart, and he didn't notice Su Su's slightly bulging belly at all. However, it was not Yi Yu's fault. Su Su was thin to begin with, and she was wearing a very loose sweater today, so her belly was only slightly bulging. If you didn't look closely, seeing her fashionable outfit, you really couldn't associate her with pregnancy. However, the scope of the safe zone was not large, and Zhuo Shijia was driving very fast in a panic. Before you could take a bite, They rushed all the way back to the Apple Villa area. Just after they left, in a tall building, the one-eyed Lu Yin was standing beside his desk. His face was grim, and he stared at the floor-to-ceiling glass in front of him with his one eye. He tilted his head and asked, "Who is that woman?" The one Yu is protecting behind him. Behind him stood Liang, who looked solemn. Upon hearing this, Liang looked rather awkward and replied cautiously, "Her name is Su, and she is the water-type supernatural being who can control 3 watermen." "Oh, that's her." Lu Yin turned around, stepped on his shiny high-top military boots, walked back to his desk and sat down. He lowered his head to glance at the documents on the table. His beautiful fingers, like a woman's, gently tapped the papers on the documents and said to Liang, "Your work has ultimately disappointed me. My subordinates failed in their duties." Liang lowered her eyes. Somehow, she finally saw the commander of this team. It was her first time facing Lu Yin, and she always felt so nervous that she dared not even breathe. However, she only saw Lu Yin sitting tall, with bursts of low laughter coming out of his throat. He glanced at Liang and said to the adjutant standing next to Liang, "Wang Ziqiao, you have been with me the longest, and you know me well. I don't like to force people. Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi's teams are really tempting. Find an opportunity to invite the relatives and friends of Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi to come to my place and teach them about the benefits and advantages they can get if they join the special power team. As long as their relatives are willing, Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi will also be willing."
"Yes."
Wang Zijiao listened with his eyes lowered, legs straight, his heart skipped a beat. He was Lu Yin's confidant, and he knew that Lu Yin's intentions were not as gentle as they seemed. Lu Yin was just speaking in a nice way. His real intention was to put Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi's relatives and friends under house arrest in order to control Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi, who are all supernatural beings. After the base is built, we need people to build the walls and go out to clear the zombies. Of course, water and food are also indispensable. An unfathomable light flashed in Lu Yin's single eye. He stood up, put his hands behind his back, and walked to Li Ying's side. He raised his beautiful hand, which was wearing a ring with an eagle pattern on it. Lu Yin patted Li Ying's shoulder and said, "You don't have to be responsible for the collection of Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi for the time being, but I trust you and think you are a talented person who can be of great use. From today on, you'll be in charge of the superpower support team and gather all those water and wood superpowers who have little attack ability to provide water and food to the base." Then Lu Yin seemed to have finished talking and walked around Li Ying. Just as he was about to walk out of the room, he seemed to remember something and turned back to Li Ying and said, "That water-type ability user is called Su. I have seen her ability. She is different from water-type ability users like you who have low abilities. She can actually control 3 water people. TSK, don't waste such a talent. Let Wang Zijiao recruit her into the Ability Vanguard team, and you don't have to worry about it." The so-called Superpower Vanguard, as the name suggests, is a force that acts as the vanguard. In order to establish a base, it is naturally necessary to clear out the zombies everywhere and clear out the territory, and this is the main task of the Superpower Vanguard. After all, Li Ying has joined Lu Yin's army for some time, so she naturally knows the hardships of the Superpower Vanguard team. Wherever the task is most difficult, there will be the Superpower Vanguard team, and wherever the Superpower Vanguard team is, there will be dead people. Ever since Lu Yin started to form the Superpower Vanguard team, there have been people with superpowers joining the team every day for the generous rewards. However, after many consecutive days, more than 20 or 30 people in the Superpower Vanguard team have died. Therefore, whether the conditions are harsh or not can be seen at a glance from the death rate of the Superpower Vanguard team. But even so, Lu Yin is still constantly recruiting people. In order to prevent the death rate of the Superpower Pioneer team from being exposed, which would lead to no one with superpowers willing to join and work for him, Lu Yin isolated the entire Superpower Pioneer team. Members of the Superpower Pioneer team are not allowed to meet with their family and friends casually, and the people in the team are said to be either on missions or undergoing rigorous training.
Li Ying knew Su's physical condition.
She was afraid that Su would not be willing to join the Superpower Vanguard team, let alone recruit her into the team. Now Su was almost 4 months pregnant, and she would never take the risk of running to Lu Yin's superpower vanguard team with such a big belly. But how could Li Ying reveal this trump card now? She has always had a plan in her heart to make good use of the child in Su's belly. Even though Lu Yi no longer allows her to interfere in the recruitment of high-level psychics such as Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi, Li Ying still does not want to give up winning their hearts. What is the most important thing in the apocalypse? Personal connections are the most important. As long as she can gain the trust of Yi Yu and Xia Yaoshi, even if she is not directly responsible for their missions in the future, she can keep the resources here in case of emergency. After figuring it out, Li Ying turned around and smiled at Wang Zijiao as if she had no ulterior motives. She did not arouse Wang Zijiao's guard at all. Li Ying smiled with her red lips curved. Then I'll leave it to you, Brother Wang. These high-level psychics have really weird tempers, so please don't feel too wronged. No, as long as the base can be built, no matter how big the grievance is, it won't be considered a grievance. Wang Zijiao answered seriously and walked out of the office with Li Ying. Li Ying smiled sincerely and threw a few coquettish glances at Wang Zijiao. She said politely, "Okay, I'll go take care of the support team first. If there's anything you don't understand about these people in the Apple Villa district and you need my help, don't be polite to me, Brother Wang."
Good.
Wang Zijiao was dazed by Li Ying's seductive glances, and his expression was a little dazed. But Li Ying turned around and left in such a graceful manner. Wang Zijiao stood where he was, looking at Li Ying's back. His mind, which had lacked the attention of women for many years, began to become active. This Li Ying is very pretty, has a very popular personality, and is very motivated. Although Commander Lu Yin had promoted her position before and now doesn't want her to be responsible for recruiting people with special abilities in the Apple Villa district, Li Ying has no complaints in her heart. She also wants Wang Zijiao to come to her if he has any questions. This made Wang Zijiao have a very good impression of Li Ying. Of course, this very good impression was definitely due to those seductive glances Li Ying threw at him. Li Ying, who was leaving, seemed to be well-versed in the art of ambiguity. She was like a master at playing with ambiguity. Just by looking at Wang Zijiao's reaction, she would know whether this man could be successfully won over. Li Ying had no interest in a man who was too easy to win over. She had no intention of giving more to Wang Zijiao. Why should she use her whole body as a bargaining chip for something that could be done with just a few flirting glances? She considers herself to be the kind of person who uses her brain in everything she does. There is no need for her to use her beauty like a socialite to do everything. She can just leave Wang Zijiao alone, as she will always be useful. And since Lu Yin has assigned her another task, Li Ying plans to do the new task at hand with all her heart. As for gathering water and wood-type psychics to form a backup team, it is indeed quite difficult. According to the information Li Ying currently has, there is only one Feifei in the Apple Villa area, and her wood-type psychic ability is slightly stronger. The rest of the water and wood-type psychics who came to save their lives have pitifully low abilities. A dozen wood-type psychics combined may not be as powerful as Feifei. Therefore, the support team's work is bound to proceed very slowly. Without Feifei in place, the water and food produced by the support team are totally insufficient to feed the entire army. Li Ying also knew the importance of Feifei, so she followed Wang Zijiao to the Apple Villa district that afternoon, ready to put pressure on Xie Qingyan to send Feifei over as soon as possible. In the Apple Villa area, as soon as Yi Yu and 18 others parked the car in front of the Su family's wall, Yi whistled. He didn't realize the strange looks people gave him. He just waved his hand and called the fortune teller and the scholar. The three of them squatted in a corner and whispered. Su looked at Yi's back, turned around and went back to his villa, ready to eat, drink, and have a good sleep. As soon as she entered the door, Su's mother came to greet her. She looked Su up and down with a worried look on her face. The first thing she asked was, "Is my grandson okay?" "It's okay, Mom. I'm going to eat something and go upstairs to get some sleep." Su shook her head, feeling a little jealous about her mother's falling in love with someone else. She thought back to when her mother didn't know about Xiao Ai's existence. She took great care of her and took care of every detail. But now, when she saw her in the morning and evening, the first thing she said was to greet Xiao Ai, which made Su Su feel that she had fallen out of favor. Go eat quickly, eat more, sleep well, and stop tossing and turning. When Su Su's mother heard that she wanted to eat and sleep, she was overjoyed and immediately ran into the kitchen to serve Su Su some food. She hoped that Su Su would be better and more obedient, not jump around, and it would be best if she could lie in bed until Xiao Ai was born. Su Su talked to her for a long time, and her mother kept nagging her for as long as Su Su had eaten. Even when Su Su yawned and went upstairs, she could still hear her mother downstairs constantly asking her not to do this or that. Alas, maybe people of Su Su's generation can't do this, or that when they are pregnant. Su Su was a little confused and worried. She felt that if she continued like this, her mother would go crazy first. She had to think of a way to make her mother not be so nervous all day long. It was just a pregnancy and giving birth to a child. Although it was difficult, she was also experienced. No matter how difficult it was, she was much stronger than those novice pregnant women. In addition, the feud with Lu Yin made Su Su feel that the suburbs of Xiangqing was no longer a safe place. She was going to give birth to Xiao Ai here, which was always a bit risky. Now she was not afraid of anything but the worst. She was already nearly 4 months pregnant and was not willing to take any risks. You could say she was timid or had no adventurous spirit, but for Xiao Ai, she must live well and unscathed. So, when Su Su thought of today's situation, she felt vaguely uneasy. This feeling of uneasiness made her feel that this place was dangerous. Su Su was thinking in her mind how to deal with what happened next. She took off her outer jacket, wearing only a tight-fitting long sweater, and lay on the bed covered with a quilt, and slowly took a nap. He didn't know whether he fell asleep during this nap or not. He felt that he had been awake the whole time, lying in bed thinking about how to deal with Lu Yin. But it seemed that he did not lie in bed for too long. When he opened his eyes, he found that it was dark. Who? In the dim light, Su Su suddenly turned around, sat up, and looked at the fluttering floor-length curtains with a vigilant look. She curled up one hand and protected her stomach with the other. However, when she smelled the familiar smell of gunpowder in the air, she suddenly felt relieved and sighed. Yiyu? Yiyu's sturdy figure walked in slowly from behind the curtains. In the dim light, his eyes seemed to be stained with fireworks. He looked at her with passion, grinning, and his white teeth bared. When he approached the bed, he looked down at Su Su, sat down, and smiled at Su Su. What are you doing here? Su Su frowned, looked at the outline of Yiyu's face, and smelled the scent on Yiyu's body. He seemed to have taken a shower, and the smell of sweat and blood on his body had dissipated a lot. I had a meeting with them late, and you went to bed early. I wanted to stay outside your window and take a sneak peek at you, but I didn't know you were such a light sleeper. His voice was a little low. In such a quiet and dim space, it sounded like a series of dense drum beats, gently knocking on people's hearts. Su Su stepped back a little, leaned back on the pillow, looked at Yiyu and smiled, and asked, "Hold a meeting? What's the point of the meeting?" Well, the scholar knows that Lu Yin is not the same kind of person as us. Yiyu scratched his hair, sat a step closer to Su Su, raised his fingers, and gently rubbed Su Su's smooth cheeks with his rough fingertips. He didn't want to do anything, just paused, and suddenly lowered his voice and said, "Sister, these days, brother has missed you." Ahem. Su Su pretended to cough and turned her head away from Yiyu's fingers. She looked a little uncomfortable. She had some understanding in her heart. Was Yiyu actually saying sweet words to her? It seemed that he had always said these words very explicitly, but she always thought he was being a hooligan. She tilted her head, and her soft, long hair fell straight down and landed on the back of Yiyu's hand. He gently rubbed her hair, still holding Su Su's cheek with that hand, leaned over, tilted his head, and pressed his hot lips against Su Su's slightly cold lips. "Come with me, baby." Yiyu sat closer to Su Su, and with his other idle hand, he grasped Su Su's slightly thicker waist. With his eyes slightly closed, he ravaged Su Su's lips and coaxed her in a hoarse voice, like a big bad wolf luring Little Red Riding Hood. We can't stay here for long. Let's go to the Sword Mountains and Seas of Fire and travel the world. As long as you are willing to follow me, I will protect you for the rest of your life. If I eat a bite, you will eat a bite too. I will never let you die before me. Suwa, baby, I really like you. I still have friends who are parents. Su dodged back, avoiding Yiyu's entangled lips, and put her hands on Yiyu, who was moving forward, to stop him from going any further. Under her palms, she could clearly feel Yiyu's heartbeat even through the thick material of his camouflage uniform. This made Su's heart beat faster, and her voice unconsciously became a little low, which sounded full of teasing to Yiyu's ears. Take them with you. We will find a good place where we can make our own living and support ourselves. We won't need to rely on that base for protection. We brothers can definitely protect you.
Why?
Isn't life in the base good? Yiyu paused, a faint red light dancing in his eyes. He lowered his eyelids. Hearing this, the aura he exuded was not very good. He only said, "The scholar knows Lu Yin." He said that Lu Yin used to work in the city. When something happened in the city, Lu Yin happened to be transferred to Xiangqing. The transfer order that sent us to the city to kill, without mercy, had Lu Yin's signature on it. What this means is that the reason why Yiyu and 20 others were deceived to go to the city was that Lu Yin played a crucial role in it.
Shushufronet.
It sounded like the situation was very complicated. No matter how many conspiracies and plots there were, that order almost killed Yiyu and others, and made Yiyu and others feel cold and heartbroken. This was a fact. In this case, no matter what Yiyu and others said, they would never submit to Lu Yin. She frowned in deep thought, and Yiyu's lips moved closer again, nibbling down her cheek. Su was startled, and then she reacted and quickly stepped back. Seeing Su avoiding him, Yiyu climbed onto the bed with his hands and feet and covered Su's body while talking. Su had no choice but to turn over and prepare to climb down from the other end of the bed, but it was too late. Yiyu's movements were not slow. Soon, like a wild beast, he covered her under his body. Just as he was about to bite her, Su helplessly lay down, protecting her stomach, looking at Yiyu above, and said, "Yiyu, don't touch me yet. I want to ask you something. Ask me quickly. I've been missing you so much these past few days that I just want you. Tell me, did you take any safety measures with me that night?" "No, that one is uncomfortable." Yiyu shook his head, baring his sharp fangs. He answered the question straightforwardly. He had nothing to be embarrassed about. So, if no safety measures are taken and a man and a woman are healthy and have no major medical problems, there will be no chance of death, right? What life? Yiyu, who was standing on top, supported himself with his hands and feet beside Su's body, and he looked impatient. After not seeing each other for so many days, what did Su want to say? "You're fine. You didn't get killed or maimed by your brother." Still not getting it? Su closed her eyes and protected her belly with both hands, fearing that Yiyu would suddenly go crazy and press down on her, which would hurt the baby in her belly. She felt that she couldn't delay it any longer tonight. After all, her belly was so big, and Yiyu looked like a lustful devil. She thought her parents were right, and she still had to tell Yiyu about this matter. If Yiyu was willing to take responsibility, she would follow Yiyu with her family. If Yiyu was unwilling to take responsibility, or showed even the slightest dislike for Xiao Ai, Su would part ways with Yiyu today. From now on, Yiyu will lead his team and go his own way, and Su will lead her family and friends and will never take any advantage of Yiyu again. I don't mean me, I mean for example. She thought about how to better organize her words to tell Yiyu about Xiao Ai's existence. Su lay on the bed, her black hair spread out like seaweed. She opened her eyes wide and looked closely at Yiyu above, and she was obviously a little nervous. As for Yiyu, upon hearing this, he pursed his lips and looked down at her. He blinked his glasses, frowned slightly, thought for a while with a serious look, and asked, "What do you mean?" "Honey, just speak frankly. I understand. You have something on your mind, and it's related to me." After saying this, Su took a deep breath. She really wanted to dig open Yiyu's head to see how many brain circuits this man had, or if he had none at all. Did he have to be so straightforward? She raised her finger and poked Yu's forehead hard. Just as she was about to confess directly, someone started making a loud noise outside the window. It seemed like someone was causing trouble. Su and Yu looked at each other. Yu quickly stood up and didn't want to bother with Su anymore. He swiftly returned to the balcony and climbed out. Su put on her jacket, found her slippers, opened the door, and walked out. Outside, the lights on the path were installed with solar panels, so they were very bright at night. In the small yard newly built by Su's father, near the medical building, there was a large group of survivors gathered. All of them were noisy, and it felt very lively. Yu quickly got out of the fence, waved his hand, gathered the team, picked up the guns, and quickly surrounded the group of survivors who were making trouble. In the baby building near the medical building, the 9 babies who were originally in a quiet state were disturbed again because of the loud noise and crying. Brother Pai was leading his gang of gangsters, holding the babies and preparing to move to another building. Su and her father and mother walked out of the walls of their villa one after another. Su was the last one. She touched her tight belly and looked at the group of noisy survivors not far away. She glanced and saw a jeep slowly driving towards a corner and stopped not far away. Liang walked out of the car gracefully. "Why don't you save us? Aren't you known as the angels in white who cure illnesses and save lives? Why don't you save us? Please save my husband. Please save my husband. You opened this hospital, and my eldest brother also contributed manpower, material resources, and financial resources. Now ordinary people here are in trouble. Isn't it your duty to lend a helping hand?" Among a group of noisy survivors, Su suddenly heard Xie Qingyan's voice. She suddenly became excited and didn't care why Liang came here. She touched her lower abdomen and walked closer to the group of survivors. She took a look through the gaps between the people. It seemed that there was a person standing in front of several medical staff of Zhuoshijia, and there was a woman kneeling on the ground crying. More people stood a few steps away, pointing fingers at Zhuoshijia and others and making moral condemnations. King Kong couldn't bear to see someone pointing at Zhuoshijia and scolding her, so he moved the gun in his hand and was about to fire a shot into the air, but was stopped by Yu. In order to stop King Kong from shooting here and attracting Liu Yin soldiers to intervene, she walked closer to Zhuoshijia next to Yu, took a look at the man standing in front of several medical staff of Zhuoshijia, and understood something in her heart. This man had sunken eye sockets, lifeless eyes, a emaciated and staggering body, and a purple face. There was no need for doctors or nurses to check him. Su could tell at a glance that this man was about to turn into a zombie. In the dark night, the woman kneeling on the ground kept begging the doctor to save her husband. Facing everyone's accusations, Liang Xiaoqi kept trying to explain that it would be better to isolate this person first, and whether to save him or not, he needed to be observed for 24 hours. Zhuoshijia, Junjiu, Dr. Hong, and a group of young nurses blocked the iron gate of the medical building, preventing the man who was about to turn into a zombie from entering. But the woman on the ground and the survivors led by Xie Qingyan refused to listen. They insisted that the doctors and nurses take the man who was about to turn into a zombie into the medical building. The woman on the ground also cried and wailed, wanting injections, medication, and surgery. She was willing to do anything as long as the doctors and nurses could do something instead of coldly and ruthlessly blocking the door and not letting them in. The woman's wailing was very loud, and with Xie Qingyan and the others joining in, the area in front of the medical building seemed chaotic. The street lights above everyone's heads emitted a pale light, and a few buzzing insects flew through the white light. For some reason, this scene made Su feel inexplicably depressed, as if something big was going to happen. She began to feel something was wrong. She frowned as she looked at Xie Qingyan, who was jumping up and down happily. She also glanced at the noisy crowd and the group of Special Forces soldiers with guns. Behind the Special Forces soldiers, Liang was walking leisurely with 2 soldiers. A little further away, Xie Yaoshi was walking quickly with his special ability team. From the building next to the medical building, Brother Pai and others came out one after another, holding the babies. The baby building where the babies were resting and playing was too close to the medical building. Looking at the posture of the survivors, it seemed that they were planning to spend the whole night here. So, under the guidance of Sue's mother, Brother Pai and others took the babies and temporarily took shelter inside the wall of the Sue family villa. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Sue sniffed it gently, and the smell was blown away by the wind. She lowered her head and rubbed her nose gently. She looked at the man standing in front of her, who was about to turn into a zombie. She felt that there was no vitality left in this man. She pointed at the man as increasingly distracted eyes and said to Zhuoshizhe, "It's too late to save him. Solve it as soon as possible. If you don't hurry up, this man might suddenly pounce on you and bite you, and that would be a waste of time." Zhuoshizhe nodded and gave one last explanation to the wailing woman on the ground. "Your husband's condition does need to be observed. We can't let him in, because we hope he won't infect others. Take him back first, tie him up, and bring him to us after 24 hours, or let us take him somewhere else and isolate him for 24 hours.
Why? He can still be saved. He is not a zombie.
He is still a living person. Why do you have to wait 24 hours?
Why?
Cherish your time and hurry up to rescue him. He will definitely not turn into a zombie. How do you become doctors and nurses? What are you doing? We support you. Not for you to do nothing and shirk your responsibilities." One of the survivors roared at the top of his lungs. Su, who was standing next to Zhuoshizhe, burst into laughter upon hearing what he said. Inside the wall of the Su family, Brother Pai seemed to have heard what this man said as well. He held his son in his arms, poked his head out, and had an extremely sarcastic expression on his face. As for those doctors and nurses, they had been supported for a period of time before, but they also put in their own efforts and took care of the 9 babies wholeheartedly. They also measured the blood pressure and body temperature of Sue's father and mother and the young and dangerous guys in the morning and evening. Although Ruerue was young, the doctors and nurses also made a nutrition and health growth chart for him. Liang Xiaoqi and Wu Daomei took on the responsibility of taking care of Li Xiuyu. So how can we say that these doctors and nurses are being supported? They are working hard to reflect their own value. Up to now, it can be said that every doctor and nurse here has become an indispensable and important part of Su's team. Speaking of the word supported, even if we insist on saying that these doctors and nurses are supported, it is not the survivors under Xie Qingyan who support them, but Su and Yiyu who solve various zombie crises for them, and Brother Pai and his subordinates who carry supplies for them like little ants. What did these survivors who keep saying that they support the doctors and nurses do? These survivors simply captured Xie Yaoshi's team of superpowers and came to see the doctors and nurses whenever they had something to do, and sent some crystal cores and supplies by the way, and gave themselves the reputation of supporting the doctors and nurses. Zhuoshizhe glared coldly at the group of survivors who were making trouble on the opposite side. Junjiu and Liang Xiaoqi, the younger doctors and nurses, were already shaking with anger. Junjiu shouted back, pointing at the staggering man who was about to turn into a zombie, and said, "It looks like this guy is about to turn into a zombie. We can't let him in. There's a patient inside. You must isolate this person." As soon as Junjiu made this assertion, the survivors immediately started to make a commotion, especially the woman kneeling on the ground. When she heard that the doctor didn't even give her a diagnosis or do a blood test, but just said that her husband was about to turn into a zombie, she immediately screamed, stood up, and rushed towards the iron fence. It looked like she was going to hit her head against the wall. Seeing that Su had already started to cry and threatened to hang herself, there was nothing more to say. She rushed over with a wave of water, knocking the man with zombie tendencies, blocking her way to the ground. The man never got up again and began to twitch all over as he lay on the ground. Seeing this, Xie Qingyan was so angry that his face turned pale. He pointed at Su and yelled, Su, you are killing people, do you know that? It doesn't matter. I've killed a lot of people anyway. Su shrugged, laughing indifferently. Seeing that the man on the ground had gradually stopped twitching, she looked up at Xie Qingyan, narrowed her eyes, and threatened, "Or I'll kill you too, so you don't have to worry."
You.
In front of everyone, Xie Qingyan didn't believe that Su really dared to kill him. He looked back and saw Xia Yaosher standing behind the special forces. He pointed at Yi Yu behind Su Su and said angrily, Su Su, how did you become like this? Were you instigated by this beast? Look at what you have become now after being led astray by him. You were not so cruel before. Yi Yu, who was suddenly pointed out as instigating Su Su, held a gun with an innocent look on his face. Next to him stood a scholar who took out 2 quail eggs from somewhere, peeled them, and was about to put them into his mouth. Yi Yu leaned over and snatched one away. He glanced at Xie Qingyan, did not refute Xie Qingyan's words, but simply agreed and stuffed the quail egg into his mouth. How did he instigate Su Su? And was Su Su crooked? Even if she was crooked, it was not him who led her crooked. Su Su was crooked to begin with, and was bolder than the sky in killing and arson. Yi Yu felt that he was led by Su Su. Su Su, this isn't a good idea. Suddenly, a female voice came out from behind the crowd. Everyone fell silent.
Eben susurró y stopped laughing.
She stretched her neck and saw that it was Li Ying who said this. She was with 2 soldiers. She was wearing a female military uniform that looked like a Kuomintang female spy. Under the narrow skirt was a pair of high military boots. When she walked forward, the crowd automatically made way for her. Everyone looked at her standing gracefully between Su Su and Xie Qingyan. Her beautiful eyes with thick eyeliner glanced at the motionless man lying on the ground. Based on her experience, this man was indeed about to turn into a zombie. There was no surprise, no if, and no possibility. But Li Ying was not here to help Su Su today. She turned around, glanced at Su Su's belly with a charming smile, and secretly sighed in her heart that Su Su's frame was too small and too thin. It was already this month, and she was only wearing a loose sweater, so it was impossible to tell whether she was pregnant or not. Wasn't it too early for her to play this trump card? But the timing was perfect. Xie Qingyan, the biological father of the child in Su Su's belly, was here. Yi Yu, who was happy to be a father, was here too. Xie Yaosher was approaching. All the burdens following Su Su were here. Since everyone was here, how could Li Ying achieve a shocking effect if she didn't reveal this trump card? So, Li Ying said in a very comforting tone, Su Su, after all, Xie Qingyan is the father of the child in your belly. If you really kill Xie Qingyan, the child in your belly will have no father in the future, right? After hearing Li Ying's earth-shattering words, everyone was silent for a moment. Even Brother Pai and the others, who had already learned from Su's mother that Su Su was pregnant, were silent. However, in this silence, 2 voices suddenly rang out, full of surprise, shock, and disbelief.
Ah?
Are you pregnant? The first sentence was uttered by Yi Yu, who had a quail egg in his mouth, and the second sentence was uttered by Xie Qingyan. At this moment, the expressions on the faces of Yi Yu and Xie Qingyan were surprisingly the same, which made Li Ying, who was standing aside, very satisfied. Xie Yaosher, who was outside the crowd, also had an expression of surprise on his face, which slowed down his action of walking into the crowd to stop Xie Qingyan. Whose rascal is this? Whose? Xie Qingyan reacted and trembled with anger. He pointed at Su Su's nose and screamed crazily. He then pointed at Su Su's slightly bulging belly. Then, as if he remembered something, he pointed at Yi Yu behind Su Su with trembling fingers and shouted, Is it yours? Rascal! Rascal! We can't keep it! Get rid of it! Get rid of it immediately! Yi Yu was still in a daze. Su Su took a deep breath, and a murderous look gradually appeared on her face. Facing Xie Qingyan, who kept calling her rascal, she clenched her fingers into a fist. She really couldn't stand it anymore. Even though she had made an agreement with Xie Yaosher before, she couldn't stand Xie Qingyan anymore. Suddenly, Su Su turned her head and looked at Yi Yu. At this critical moment when the secret was revealed, she had to see clearly what Yi Yu's reaction was. After she saw it clearly, it would not be too late to kill Xie Qingyan. Yi Yu had been in a daze. His eyeballs moved, and he opened his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, the quail egg in his mouth, which he had forgotten to chew, slid down his throat and got stuck in his larynx. He twitched on the spot, took a few steps forward and slapped Xie Qingyan, who was rushing up to hit Su Su, to the ground. Then, he covered his throat, rolled his eyes, turned his head with difficulty, and began to ask King Kong for help with his eyes rolled up. He was so frightened by what Liang had revealed that he was almost choked to death by a quail egg. Liang was a little confused and turned to look at Xie Qingyan, loudly questioning, "Isn't the baby in Su Su's belly yours? I haven't even touched this witch. How could she be mine?" Xie Qingyan looked at Su Su with disgust, as if he was looking at something dirty. With an extremely hurt look, he yelled at Su Su, "Abort it. This child cannot be kept. It must be aborted. I'll beat you to death." Su Su didn't care about Yu's reaction at this moment. No mother could tolerate others calling her child a rascal. She rushed forward to kill Xie Qingyan. The scene suddenly became chaotic. The woman who was crying and trying to hit the iron fence, seeing that no one stopped her, turned around and started to fight with Junjiao and Zhuoshijia. Xie Qingyan was so angry that he had lost his mind. With half of his face swollen, he got up and wanted to beat Su Su, the witch, to death. He felt like Su Su had cuckolded him, and now he couldn't take it off. Su Su had actually given birth to a rascal for him, and he couldn't allow this rascal to survive. He absolutely couldn't allow this rascal to survive. The scene was in chaos. Su Su and Xie Qingyan rushed towards each other, and it seemed that a life-and-death fight was about to take place. Li Ying and Xie Yaoshi were so shocked by this unexpected plot twist that they stood there in a daze. Xie Yaoshi was less shocked than Li Ying. After all, he knew that Su Su and Yu had such a night together, but Li Ying didn't know that. In the chaotic scene, she was bumped by Xie Qingyan, who rushed forward to hit Su Su. She immediately reacted and pushed Xie Qingyan away, accidentally